Ground Zero. So this is where the first guy got AIDS.
Peter, this is the site of the 9/11 terrorist attacks.
Oh, so Saddam Hussein did this?
No.
The Iraqi army?
No.
Some guys from Iraq?
No.
That one lady who visited Iraq that one time?
No, Peter, Iraq had nothing to do with this. It was a bunch of Saudi Arabians, Lebanese, and Egyptians financed by a Saudi Arabian guy living in Afghanistan and sheltered by Pakistanis.
So you're saying we need to invade Iran?
The loudspeaker spoke up and said, "Wait, Jimmy." The loudspeaker spoke up and said, "Wait, Jimmy." The loudspeaker spoke up and said, "Wait, Jimmy." Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up. Give up. Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy.
You are listening to Ground Zero Radio and the Secret Teachings Radio. This Friday 13th simulcast for the two shows. I'm your host, Brian Gable. Clyde Lewis is also with us tonight. Put him here in a few minutes. Wanted to let you know what you're listening to and what we're talking about tonight on the show. We are live on various platforms, groundzeroplus.com, Facebook, YouTube, X, as well as, I believe, the Ground Zero Facebook, or mine and Ground Zero. If you would like to reach out to the show tonight, you can jump into one of those chat rooms or comment on social media. You'll also be able to email me if you would like to get your comment into the show, rdgable at yahoo.com, rdgable at yahoo.com. I want to welcome all of you who are listening in the streaming platforms for the Secret Teachings. Let you know that tonight again is a simulcast with Ground Zero, so you will hear some stuff that maybe you're not used to hearing tonight on the show, a different introduction, and also we will probably have some commercial breaks. But if you're in the archive later, you will not be hearing those. I will cut them out. Tonight on the show, you might also see two titles: Darwinian Morality, Stuff Just Got Real. That is the show promo that Clyde Lewis made. I've labeled the show slightly differently on YouTube for the way that the algorithm works. And the idea is, as we've been talking about on the Secret Teachings and on Ground Zero, as I've been hosting both, the idea is scripted eschatological narratives, the end of the world, the idea of the apocalypse and Armageddon and all of that. I think I've been pretty thorough with my analysis of this, having, I don't like to use the word predicted, but having been able to foresee this coming many, 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 many years ago. And I think that knowing enough of the eschatology and the symbolism, this is one of the reasons that Ground Zero and the Secret Teachings go together so well. And this is why Clyde Lewis and I have been friends for a long time, because we've seen this play out in the real world, and we have applied our knowledge of symbols and theology and mythology. Whether or not people believe in the types of things that government officials or military officials, it turns out, believe in regard to the end of the world or the coming of Jesus, etc. Whether or not you believe it doesn't really matter, because they believe it. And people like Pete Hegseth and others have been very, very vocal about their beliefs, and they are willing to start and have started a war, that of which we don't know the long-reaching implications of, in order to fulfill a prophecy, which really ultimately is not, I mean, you think about the word prophecy, you think about what it implies or what the word itself actually means, and it's a little bit different than what you might expect it to mean if you define it. The word prophecy means a prediction that will happen in the future. And I'm not sorry to say that if you actually read the Bible and you study, quote, biblical prophecy, you'll find, and this applies to Islam as well, you'll find that prophecy is derived from several different books. You'd have to go to the book of Daniel, the book of Revelation, various other books in order to pull out the so-called prophecy. In other words, it's like different authors, different time periods, different verses, and then they just mash them all together and, oh, that's what's going to happen at some undefined future date. So I don't really believe, quite frankly, this is me, Clyde might disagree, but I don't really believe in prophecy because I don't, at least in that respect, because I think that it's largely fabricated based on, well, quite frankly, I think it's delusions and paranoia, and it's interpreting metaphors as literal. And it's really the equivalent of reading a story about Odin. And although Odin might have actually been a real person, it's like reading a story about Odin and then thinking like it's real, like he was literally hanged on a tree the size of the world. It's a symbol. It's not meant to be taken literally. And I think because we take these things literally, we find ourselves in the midst of conflict after conflict after conflict. And I'll say this before I bring Clyde on. I got to tell you, that's one of the best things about being overseas, not just living overseas, but living outside of the United States and outside of the so-called Western world, is that like every time I go to the store to get groceries, every time I take a walk, every time I go to the park, the one thing I know for sure is that there is nobody around me who is really even aware of, let alone concerned with to the point of obsession with the same kinds of eschatological, Armageddon-esque, apocalyptic themes that you find so much in the Western world. Like when I asked my wife if she knew what the Ark of the Covenant was and she said no, I just thought, this is where I belong. Like I don't care what King David said. I don't care what the Ark of the Covenant is. I mean, I do. I know about all that stuff and it's important, but like I just don't care because the people that care about it tend to be ready to kill for it. And I find that to be abhorrent and obscene, especially the way that we tend to treat other people who don't have our specific denominational beliefs, even within our own religious cults. It's just nice to not have to deal with it. I'll tell you what really is the core issue for me. I saw this video about how Israeli naval ships were supposedly blown up by Iranian missiles. And it was, I don't know if it's apparently part of the Israeli Navy had been obliterated. And I don't know if that's propaganda or if that's true, but I was thinking, because the question on the video was, you know, this should concern you. The Israeli ships got blown up. Oh my God, the Iranians are doing so much damage. And I just thought, you know, it reminds me of George Costanza and Seinfeld, where George Costanza was dating this woman and he thought that she was throwing up in the bathroom after dinner. So they go to dinner, nice meal, and then she'd go to the bathroom and she'd put her hand down her throat. You could hear her in the bathroom. And Jerry said, so you're concerned with her. You're concerned that she's refunding, she's throwing up. And George Costanza says, of course I'm concerned. I'm paying for those meals. And that's kind of how I feel about the whole thing. I'm not really invested in it. I don't really care. But, you know, if they're blowing up Israeli ships, I do kind of care because I paid for those ships. I paid for that meal. So I am kind of concerned about it. With that being said, those of you who know who I am, you know my take on a lot of this. So what we're going to do tonight on Ground Zero of the Secret Teachings, TSTGZ, is we're going to bring Clyde Lewis on, and we'll let him take us through a kind of a monologue of his assessment on a lot of this. As you know, Clyde has been getting healthier, and Clyde is actually getting better. And I keep saying we'll be back sooner than later, so hopefully he'll be back sooner than later. Until then, that's why you have the simulcast show for listeners of the Secret Teachings. It's a little bit different. Hope that you got used to it already and you know what to expect. Otherwise, let's bring Clyde Lewis on and let's let Clyde take us through this, the Darwinian morality.
Right.
Clyde, thank you for, well, I'm glad that you're healthier, and I appreciate that you can take the time to do the show with me. I know it's also your show too, but
Right.
your thoughts on all of this?
Well, usually it's hit and miss with my health right now because they're running tests on me and all kinds of crazy things. So we're getting into the, I guess, the home stretch, I guess you can call it. But, still it's, it's always a gamble, I guess, at the moment. And I don't know. That's why I didn't do the show last week, because I ran into some problems with pain. And I actually went to bed. I don't go to bed at like 7 o'clock, but I did that night. So I apologize to everybody for not being here. But, I wanted to cover something last week that wasn't covered. I know that, Ryan has given his views on this. And so if it seems academic to a lot of people, I'm giving people the opportunity to hear my view on things. And that is that there are two reasons why we're doing what we're doing here. It's not just the religious reason. Okay. If you say to yourself, it's about religion, which we're hearing from Hegseth and Trump and all these other people that, in generals, it was rumored that Trump was anointed by, high priests to become the Mashiach, as it were. One thing we need to understand is that wars are fought for many reasons. They're fought for religious belief. They're fought for, land. They're fought, but what it is too, and if you want to just eliminate all the religious affiliation, which Ryan attempted to explain to all of you, that he doesn't care because most of the time prophecy is metaphor. My caring is that, once again, it's not what I believe, it's what they believe. And I feel like Jean Baudrillard when he says the world is run on symbols and numbers and all these things, and people need to know this. Like when Joseph Campbell says, we are all responded to myths and allegories that we've been raised with for a long time, and we are influenced by it, whether we know it or not. And I know that maybe some of the Western philosophies, or the Eastern philosophies that I bring up, probably don't mean anything to you. And probably they go over your head, but I use all of them because I think that it is important that we understand that on this planet, we have different philosophies, and that the people who are the leaders or the rulers over us, they have their belief systems too. And if they're believing that what they're doing is justified by God, it's scary. And if others are believing it's survival of the fittest, which is the Darwinian morality, it's an oxymoron. And it's also very, very terrifying, because that means that if we're a country that overpowers another country, we do it because we believe that we have the mightier army, which means that the whole goal of Darwinian morality is the elimination of what we see as imperfect things on the planet. That's why you get things like eugenics. That's why you have people who are saying certain people are unfit. That's why you hear about countries who look at themselves as being genetically advanced, and so they must go in and take out the genetically inferior. We're looking at people who are worried about the population becoming more Muslim and less Christian. That's another fear too, because it is happening that the Muslims are going to they're going to be more Muslim, more Islam than there's going to be Christianity, and people are afraid of that. But it's all somehow buried in this myriad of symbols and numbers. And I find it, again, advantageous for all of us that we're doing this show tonight, especially as it's fallen on Friday the 13th. And as with everything else that happens at this time of year, we find ourselves approaching the Ides of March. And what that is, and we've talked about this, it is definitely times of increased war campaigns. And we look at wars usually as material. But if we find ourselves dabbling in the Darwinian morality or the mysticism and the ritualism, it becomes an occult excuse for bloodletting. It becomes an imperative, if you want to think of a science, Darwinian survival of the fittest. So we're looking at imperative war, we're looking at religious war, we're also looking at wars that have mysticism and a lot of what we call occult symbolism behind it. Synchronistic also, that if you take a look at the year 2026, there are 3 Fridays in 2026 that land on 13. We had one last month, we have one this month. I mean, this is the first time since 2015 that the combination of the day and date associated with bad luck has reoccurred 3 times in the calendar year. Next time we're going to see this in November. So we have a long time before we see it again. But Like I said, one last month. The other was going to be in November. So this one, today's Friday the 13th, is an unlucky gateway number to the Ides of March. We talk about that. We remember Julius Caesar being betrayed by his own men and killed. It's also been a day set aside where we remember the Templars, who are the powerful Catholic military religious order that were established to protect the Christian pilgrims heading to Jerusalem, where they were eventually arrested. They were tried on the idea that they were worshiping the devil, tortured on orders of King Philip of France, and that happened in 1307. So there's another 13 in 1307. So the spilling of blood in that time just points out that either God approved of the sacrifices as gods of old did, because of course King Philip and also the Pope seem to have a reason for dismissing and destroying these crusaders, or that we all take part, or we all basically support Darwinian morality. So you need to take your pick as to what you think it is. It's either God blessed or it's Darwinian morality. I mean, tell a Christian about morality and he's going to look at you and go, I'm not morality, about Darwinianism or Darwinism. And he's going to say, yeah, the evolution of monkeys. And no, that's not what it is. It's the idea of survival of the fittest. If we're better than Iran and we have more power than Iran, we can go in and kill Iran and justify it basically because it's survival of the fittest. And I've been forewarning about the Ides of March. I've been saying that, here we have a time where we have war planning. And in that war planning, we have to also figure in the mystical bloodletting, because this ritual has been aligned for some reason with cosmic mysticism, which allows for biblical and astrological prophecies to come true. It's like the old axiom, things just got real. And every spring, usually things get real. Blood is shed, people die, goddesses are sacrificed, kings are sacrificed, people fall from their thrones, armies fall at the hands of those who are mightier. And we, when Ryan and I were together, we first in February. Now, if you remember the way things went with the show, and if you're keeping track of these shows, we had the warnings all the way back in February. Ryan and I were using the symbolism. We talked about it during the Super Bowl. We spoke of Longma. And of course, that's how, with the Chinese zodiac, we have the fire horse, and how a fire horse can evolve into a dragon if something disrupts the piece of the planet. Now, we did that show because we wanted to point out to you that something would be probably disrupting the planet within the next couple of days. And I know there are probably a lot of people out there who are listening to this. Some people who are new to the secret teachings or to Ground Zero. And I know that they probably say, well, this isn't important to me, or this doesn't change my views at all. But see, we're learning that the war planners, as in the old Black Sabbath song, they're like witches making plans of chaos against an enemy. They're using their might in order to say that they're right. They're using survival of the fittest as their excuse, clouded up with a little bit of religion. And here you have telling people that Donald Trump is well anointed by God, and they make him a Mashiach or a Messiah. And this is where they violate the first commandment. Not one person, not some fringe organization within Zionist Christianity is going to say, well, that's not true. Well, look, life itself, being in existence here on this planet, it's been, for me, and I'm sure for all of you, it's an extraordinary mystery. We don't know how it's all going to turn out. I mean, hell, 90 days ago, I had no idea I'd have renal failure and wind up in a facility and be away from you all for 90 days. And now I'm feeling better and getting better. I'll be back in the saddle again, and hopefully bring more interesting shows to you. But it's all a mystery with too few clues to realistically hope to solve all the problems in this lifetime. I mean, I can pick and choose, I can reveal certain things, but only you have that choice to respond. And we've been given clues in intuition, not to mention we see the guideposts. It's like what Rod Sterling says, the guideposts are up ahead, leading into the Twilight Zone, indicate we see disruptions to our lives, wars, rumors of wars. We see, people being shot and killed. We see synagogues being attacked in Michigan. I mean, we do have something to guide us through mystery, through mysticism, through synchronicity. And it's a moral compass. And nobody knows what or who gave us the moral compass. They call it the still small voice. Some people call it the light of Christ. You can call it whatever you want, but you pick and choose who guides you in this world. Not just say, well, I'm a Christian and I follow what Jesus says. I follow the word. No, not necessarily. You follow it if it basically fits your cognitive resonance. And that's what the truth is. It's not, I'm not making it up. I'm not criticizing people for having beliefs that are like this, because I'm sure I have beliefs that are bizarre, or I have speculations that are bizarre. And I'm sure a lot of people hold me to them and think Clyde believes this or Clyde knows this, and I don't. You know, I just have a knack for seeing these patterns, and you know, people have their Bibles. I mean, I go to like ghost conferences and you know, woo places, and I see crystal balls, and they all serve the same purpose. They talk about wonders in heaven. They talk about signs that you should see, omens, omen to nations. And when you talk about wonders in heaven, you talk about these things that have always been spoken of by prophets, which basically before the prophets came the astrologers, and people who are, you know, fringe Christians say, well, astrologers are of the devil. And so why is it that one power of mysticism, whether it be priesthoods, priestcrafts, or whatever, why is one more valuable than the other? And why is it that we justify Darwinian morality by saying that God blesses it? Okay, it isn't coherent. It's an argument of fallacy, and that's how I see it. I see it that you know, like I said, Bibles, crystal balls, magic 8 balls, they all serve the same purpose. People who use their crystals, you know, I always get told, oh, don't use Ouija boards, but the same things that power these crystals that go back and forth and stuff, they're powered by the same power. They're powered by the unconscious mind. And people don't know this because they get educated by people who don't read or study this stuff, and they're the ones that go ahead and say that the owl at Bohemian Grove is Moloch, when it's not. It's the Athenian owl, because it's a, you know, like we were talking about earlier with Ryan. It's like Ryan got skewered because he said, well, that owl is not having anything to do with Moloch. But you've had people like Alex Jones and all these people tell you this, and you just say, well, who do I believe? Well, I believe Alex Jones. What's Alex's opinion over someone else that may have studied this as learned the symbolism for the longest time? I've studied the symbolism. I know what the symbolism is. And when I see people try to throw something out there and it sticks, I just shake my head and I'm thinking, well, again, things just got real. They got real because somebody put the tulpa into power. They gave it that mystical push, that meme. And so this is where biblical and astrological prophecies come true, because it's like, I mean, and one of the things about Nostradamus too, you read Nostradamus, and I always feel like somebody tries to put a square peg in a round hole with Nostradamus. They try to interpret things that may or may not be there. And it's all up for like metaphor, as Ryan said. It's about metaphor, it's about interpretation, it's about how you see it. It's fascinating to talk about. It's not necessarily something that's going to be set in stone. As I said, life is a mystery. And with that mystery, you cannot tell, just like the weather. I mean, they say we can predict the weather. Sure. You can take a look at all of the things, and you look at patterns, and you look at climate, you look at all that. Sure, they can make an educated guess, but weather is such a fractal that can change at a dime. And your weatherman standing there saying, well, I'm sorry, I said it was going to be fair, and it ends up raining. I mean, so we like I said, we look at our predictions, we count our predictions, we count our speculations. We say this is what, you know, and like I said, a lot of people probably, when they heard the show, they said, well, you know, this is Eastern philosophy, it's Chinese zodiac. How does that apply to me? Well, it applies to the world because of the extraordinary mystery that is all of us.
And
The Bible. Yeah, go ahead.
Most of this also is derived from the Eastern world. I know that
Yeah.
that's such a controversial thing to say, but if you study the origin of where these traditions come from, there's this weird idea, Clyde, that say the Ten Commandments, the Decalogue, say the idea of Western or Christian or Jewish morality, that these are unique things in the world. They're
Right.
not unique things. And there were things like them that were being taught that they were actually derived from later in the very far Eastern world. If you go back
Well,
far enough to the
yeah,
idea
well,
of a deluge,
yeah.
the Indian prophets, the Indian mystics, they survived reportedly in the Himalayan mountains. They came down after the deluge, and then they spread what was left, kind of like with Atlantis and Egypt, that
Right.
idea. They spread
Right.
what was left of those teachings and
Right.
created most of the modern religious systems.
Well, see, Darwin talks about this, but he doesn't hide behind God. Okay. When we go in and we kill a group of people, we say we do it on behalf of our God, when in reality we're doing it because we believe that we're the superior being. I mean, it's like people saying, well, you came in and stole the land from the Indians. Well, we were militarily superior. We were able to beat them at their own game. And unfortunately, we were able to kill 11 million of them. I mean, that's the story. It's not a good story, but it's another example of Darwinian morality. And people don't believe that they support it. But when they sit there and they use God as their crutch and saying, well, we're going to eliminate those evil Muslims because God wants it that way. Well, you're hiding behind your Darwinian morality. You're hiding behind the idea that we're bigger, we're better, we're stronger. We can turn them into a parking lot. Enough said. I've heard that from so many people. We're going to turn them into a parking lot. Doesn't matter. I'm glad you feel that way. I'm glad you feel you're that superior. Probably you're not, because you're going to be sipping your beer while some young guy is going to go and die for you. I mean, this is the game. You know, we're doing the bloodletting, and we don't understand why we're doing it. We're doing it because it's an imperative that's been handed down from, I guess you call them the gods, because they have to have a superior being telling them to kill, whether it be an alien or a god or whatever. And that's the excuse. When in reality, it's all about survival of the fittest. It's all about we're bigger and better and stronger. Might makes right. Let's go in and kill people. And this is when stuff gets real.
You know what's really interesting, Clyde? If you study the ancient systems of mysticism, whether they're in Greece or they're in Africa or they're in Persia or they're in the very far East, what you'll find is that, contrary to popular belief, the idea of animal sacrifices or barbaric rituals was in part and in large part a result of later Christian writers. You'll find that when you're looking at, say, the Greek mystery schools, the lesser and greater mystery schools, where they taught that the seed of the world or the seed of nature goes dormant in the winter and then it's resurrected in the spring, kind of like in the greater mysteries, they taught that that is something that correlates with the soul, the spirit, which is dormant in the body that has to be awakened, and so you can be reborn. If you interpret some of the things from those schools, those philosophical schools, as literal, you pervert the tradition. So, for example, if you read a grimoire, you read one of these black books,
Right.
you read them and they say things like you need to use the skin of a kid in order to write out your incantation or to draw your magical circle. And people read that and think, oh my God, that's like human sacrifice, child sacrifice, and they're using the flesh of a child. Well, that's not what it means. It means a goat. You would sacrifice a goat because a kid is a baby goat.
Right.
If you interpret it literally, that's what you get, in the same way that if you interpret the mystery tradition of going into the self and essentially dying and being resurrected while
Yeah.
you're actually alive, realizing that you're a soul and you're a spirit and not a physical body. If you interpret that literally, then what you get is human sacrifice. You have to
Sure.
kill something, right? You have to kill
Sure.
the animal.
Right.
It's a misinterpretation. It's a perversion of these traditions. The animal that you kill is not supposed to be a physical beast. It's supposed
Right.
to be you. It's your ego. That's what you have to kill. And this
Right.
is why
Well,
it's so important to recognize this, because we don't need to be spilling the blood of anything, animal or
but
human.
again, we leave it up to the idea of the evolutionary process, where we see certain metaphors and certain words being twisted into justifying the idea of killing something that we see as not perfect or not fit to be alive. Now, I want to make it clear. Elizabeth wrote in the chat room, I just saw this, she talked about Herbert Spencer. Herbert Spencer came up with the phrase survival of the fittest. It was Darwin, though, that used it to talk about natural selection. And it's all about the idea of, you have a higher survival rate when you have a better and more effective reproductive process or success. And this is another thing that I think is going into this as well. As we see, as I said earlier, we see Islam becoming very powerful in the world because there's a lot of Islamists and there's a lot of Muslims in the world. We're seeing that, the government of France would certainly become Islamic because there's not very many people left to be the leaders. You see Muslims in England. You see a Muslim governor in New York. These are things that send signals to other tribes that, hey, your tribe is going to go away. You got to do something to survive. And that's why the Darwin morality or the Darwinian morality is something that's an imperative right now. And you can't justify it by saying it was Darwin or Herbert Spencer or Robert Louis Stevenson. You just do it because you say, well, God says it's okay.
As someone in the chat room had alluded to, they're still waiting for someone to explain to them with evidence and like critical, actual evidence, not just sensational stories. What exactly is so wrong with an individual converting to Islam? And I think that that's a great question, because when you study Islam, it teaches precisely what Christianity teaches. It teaches the way of God. It teaches fasting. It teaches that you should give to the poor, that you should help people in need. It's the same basic fundamental principles.
Well, we have, the trouble is, it's in every religion. It's an Abrahamic religion. They have their death cult writings. Ours are in Leviticus. And I don't know where they are in the Quran, but everybody says, well, they say, kill person here, or Jesus needs to be in a pile of feces there. But they point out those things where they realize that these things change over time and that these ancients thought this way. And why did they think this way? Because of Darwinian imperatives, Darwinian morality. Because again, I say it's an oxymoron, but yet it's done in the name of God, or it's done in the name of gods, because no one wants to believe that they're cruel enough to eliminate something that's smaller than them or that's more fragile than they are. I mean, that's why killers kill, is because they see something that is more frail or fragile than they are, and they get their power from eliminating something they see as puny, fragile, vulnerable, and that's something that's in us all. We're capable of it. But see, that's the thing, is that when you look at, what the astrologers say, what the Darwinians say, what the fringe Zionists are saying, or whatever, they all use the same words, except they use them in different ways, different metaphors, different pantheons. They use the same mystic powers. They use the same power. They always have some mystical guide or messiah that's more valid than the other one. And this is why we have war. Is because it's blood, it's Blutkeit, it's the blood cement, it's what keeps us. I mean, I remember when the attack on Iran happened, and immediately prophecy experts, theologians, got a hold of Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah in the Bible, that talks about Elam, which is an area in, I think, southern Iran. It's also it was a Persian stronghold in that time period. And they said, well, this is a fulfillment of Jeremiah 49. And you read the passage, and it talks about breaking the bow of Elam, which is Iran, and indicates a time of judgment on its leadership, followed by future restored and a spiritual transformation of the nation. And so what happened at that time, which makes it even more interesting, that brings it more into clarity, is that it was a cosmic mystical event, several of them that happened. We had planets arranging themselves single file in heaven. We had an alignment. We had a blood moon on March 3rd, and it happened on the third month, the third day. It happened at 3:33 a.m. in the west, along with this year of triple 13s. I mean, ask yourself, is this a cosmic coincidence? We usually have the integers and numeral signposts of 3:3, 3:33. The alignment is interpreted as a 33 portal that symbolizes a time for, as they say, when you see tridesca, what do they call it? Not tridescaphobia. It's vision triplicity. When you see that, it's a message where you set your boundaries. So the boundaries were set. The plans were in line. Do not cross the line. If the line's crossed, we will attack. Celestial event also happened at a time where we see that there were 303 days remaining in the solar calendar. So you got 333, 303. The moon turned to blood, and it was the worm moon. Full moon, lunar eclipse in Virgo, and that means it's time to release what no longer serves you. It's time to take away the old things that are just getting in the way. It's time to go in, get rid of the weeds, replace them with the crops, go in and harvest that which you can. And that's the thing. It's a time. It's funny that in the springtime, we talk about the strange harvest of bloodletting and the bloody wars. And it's proposed that the reason why this happens is because of moon phases leading to Easter. So you look at the month of Nisan, and then they say, we look at the moon phases from the 13th into the 14th of Nisan. Now, Nisan is the first month of the ecclesiastical year and the 7th month of the Hebrew civil year. So if you want to look at that and you say to yourself, well, all of this is something that corresponds mystically and with the blood sacrifices of March and April that happens in the Gregorian calendar. So it's a spring month for containing the holidays of things like Purim and Passover and, all the other holidays that come together in the spring, Easter. And so, and then for all the ideas of birth and rebirth, we see that March and April become the bloodiest times of the year between the months leading to the burning times of Beltane. So we look at the prophecies. Yeah, go ahead.
Spring is the regenerative season, and in the old tradition, you would have stories, and you still have these stories if you go and find them and consult mythology books, where you have Mithra killing the bull. The bull is Taurus, but the bull is earth, and the blood of the bull spills onto the ground, and out of that blood sprouts up flowers. It's the sacrifice that allows for the earth to regenerate in the same way that the sacrifice of the physical carnal pleasures and the beast, the animal sacrifice, allows for the soul, if you will, to regenerate, for you to recognize what you truly are. That was the secret. Life was the secret of the mystery traditions. That's why when you pervert them and interpret things literally, you go from a symbolic bull being killed and having its symbolic blood spilt onto the ground that is also symbolic, to interpreting stories of Jesus on the cross as physical, literal, that he died and was resurrected physically. And then after you take that into consideration and think that that's literal, then in his name you wage war in order to nudge God to send a Messiah,
right?
And you're willing to destroy the world in order to bring that about. That's the perversion of the secret teachings.
And there were people, and I remember I have said this many times on my show, that we have leaders and we have others that want to nudge God. They want to emblematize the Eschaton, and they're going to do it. And I go, it's not about blue beam, basically there to create or mimic a UFO invasion. They want so badly, though, to create a second coming, which is the most cynical thing mankind can do, according to Baudrillard, who is, of course, a postmodern observer, and says, that would be the ultimate betrayal of the world, is to simulate or otherwise nudge God and say that, Armageddon's here, the second coming is coming, and that they'll have control over that second coming. And they will.
Can I ask you a question about that? Your take on something?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you. I mean, I grew up a Christian, and I know that you have this background too. I'm not a Christian anymore, but I'm curious to get your take on this. What exactly? What is it? If people want to believe that the Messiah is going to come back, I mean, for Christians, that means he's coming back, he's returning. But for Jews, they believe that he hasn't come yet because they rejected Jesus, and so their Messiah. Wouldn't that make the Jewish Messiah, if you build the third temple and you
the Antichrist
temple worship, right, and you have animal sacrifice that then replaces the sacrifice of Christ? Doesn't that kind of destroy the Christian faith?
No, it basically, the Christians would turn around and say, well, he's an Antichrist, he's not the Messiah. And that's what we have to deal with. And that's why, when you hear about how eventually there's going to be some sort of a scattering or that of Israel, it's going to be because the Messiah is there, It's their Messiah, and the Christians are not going to be able to relate to that Messiah because it's not going to be Jesus.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at specifically is that if you build the third temple and you
Yeah.
reinstate temple worship and reinstate the animal sacrifice, which
Yeah.
is how they're going to build it anyway, they've already done
Yeah.
one of the sacrifices of the red heifer.
Mhm.
I mean, that replaces the Christian concept of Jesus' sacrifice.
Yeah, it does
So
for them.
in effect, it destroys the Christian narrative. And if I just don't understand if Christians are supporting that. Do they not recognize that? Because I'm
They
not a
don't know it.
see it. I don't understand.
They don't know it because they do not know the eccentricities of esoteric knowledge. Why a blood
It's their own
sacrifice is so important. I mean, think about it.
It's their own
Eating-
religion, though.
Well, yeah, but see, that's the thing is everything now, and it's going to take a while. Everything up until now, it's been one big Hallmark card. That's how I see it. I mean, everybody is so hell-bent on believing that when they're going to die, they're going to be in a sponge-painted world. Everybody's going to be in terry cloth robes, playing their harps to some guy that looks like Barry Gibb. I don't believe that. I don't believe that's going to happen. I believe that it's going to be a lot more enlightening than just praising God for the rest of the eternity. It's going to be an enlightening period for all of us. If the second coming is to happen, it's going to be an enlightening period for all of us, and we have to all have an agreement to a certain degree that we are having some supernatural or mystical force happening, taking us over. We have to agree, most of us have to agree, that this is happening. Otherwise, again, this is going to cause a war between those who see the idea of a Messiah or a Christ making people vulnerable, and they'll take off and they'll say, okay, well, my God's better than your God, and it's going to go back to the ancient wars that happened before. And that's what this is about now to some people. It's like you got Pete Hegseth saying, well, this is what God wanted. You got people saying the evil people here and there, this is what God wanted. So yeah, I mean, this is something that I think, like I say, it's few clues, and people have their Bibles, their crystal balls, they have everything else, and they use these things, and that's why we have wars.
Well, what did Mr. Carlin say? He said, well, one soldier prays for God to destroy his enemies. The other one prays for God to destroy his enemies. Somebody's going to be disappointed.
Yeah, I know.
Would it be everybody?
Well, maybe the guy that crosses himself was going to survive. I don't know. It's like,
Let me
have you ever seen that skit or heard that skit, God at a boxing match?
No, I don't believe so.
It's a funny bit that was done with National Lampoon. It's just the idea that, God is sitting on his big throne and he's looking down at a boxing match. And the angel says to him, God, who are we going to allow win this boxing match? He says, well, I don't know. Who do you think's the best? And he says, well, so-and-so's the best, and his odds are to win. Says, but one thing, Murphy down there, he crossed himself before he went into the ring. So, well, let's let him win because he crossed himself. It's just the idea that every little bit, it's like Pascal's wager. Every little bit puts you closer and closer to the idea that, hey, you better do good, because if you die and you go to the other side and you're going to be judged, then you've done good. Or if you die and the lights go out and that's it, it doesn't matter anyway. So, just live your life as if Pascal was right and that you need to do good. That's kind of another, I guess you could call it another, what do you call it? Schrodinger thesis, where you're saying, am I going to live? Am I going to die afterwards? I guess you find out when you're gone. So
I've been pointing this out on my show about morality recently. I've been pointing out that there's a difference between being a moral person, but not identifying as a particular religion. So, you're moral, you live ethically, you might even follow in the so-called footsteps of Christ or Buddha, but you don't consider yourself a Christian. This is how I personally see myself. Although I practice Shinto, it's basically the same thing. But I'm not a Christian, but I live the lifestyle of what a Christian, at least ideally, is supposed to live. Now, on the other hand, if I just called myself a Christian, but didn't live that way, I would be more accepted by the Christian community. And this, I think, is the problem. It's an issue of, does the title matter or does the lifestyle matter? And when you read about how you should pray in the book of Matthew, and you read about this in the Quran and the Bible both teach that prayer should be done internally. It should not be something that's done so that it's put on public display.
It's called vain repetition.
Yes, and when you see the White House having these big prayer sessions and putting it all over social media, and the president and Pete Hegseth reading Bible verses as they approve bombs being dropped on civilians. It is not only psychotic, but it's also kind of contradictory. It's kind of
Well,
in opposition to
yeah.
faith that these people are supposed to have, which in Hebrew, opposition to God is Shaitan, which would make these people, in my assessment, fake Christians, and it would also make them, quite literally by definition, Satanists, because the
Well,
title matters more than the morality and the behavior. And
what
that's
it
a big
is,
problem.
it's something called being Christ haunted, and that's a lot of people don't realize what that is. There are people who, you know, are scared to death that they're going to do something that's going to anger God, and so they basically hide behind this veil of I am a believer, I believe this, I believe that, believe this, believe that. Everything they do has to be blessed by Jesus. Everything I mean, even vacuuming the floor and all this other crazy stuff. They do it because they're scared to death. It happened to them, and so that's why, yeah, we go on we bomb Iran, and then we have to get down on our knees and pray because we're scared to death that maybe we did something that was not approved by God. So we have to tell God, this was done, and we did it because we had to do it. Again, we had to do it because these guys are like, they're like roaches. They're covering the entire planet, and we need to get rid of them. It's like, we want you to understand that this is our intention. It has nothing to do with murder, or it has nothing to do with whatever. And like you said, well, what God grants that kind of, destruction and blesses that kind of destruction. Well, I mean, we argue that it's Satan, but then again, you look at the Old Testament, you're thinking, well, and then some people have said that Jehovah was Satan. So I guess yeah,
it's what Campbell said. Campbell said it's a tribal god.
Right.
And that's why, to the Jews, any other god would be satanic, if you will, or any other god would be Baal, if you will. And to those other tribes, the Jewish God would also be Baal, because, one man's trash is another man's treasure. One man's God is another man's demon or devil.
I'm looking at Elizabeth's post again in chat. She says, survival of the fittest to me means at biological level to adapt, not something being purposely eliminated. Not true. It's been said that it's the fit and the not fit. That's always been the bottom line with survival of the fittest. Either you're fit or you're not fit. And yes, it's about how are you going to continue the survival of your species, and how are you going to eliminate the virtual takeover of your species through reproductive means. I mean, we're already terrified, and you can look this up. I'm not making it up. There are people who are, fringe people who believe that, we are going to, and it's proof that's going to happen, we are going to be overcome by Muslims and those who are not Christian. And that is going to be a problem for a lot of people.
What's funny about that is I talked to David Knight about this when I had him on the show recently, is that over here in Japan, the Christian population's less than 0.5%. And yet, somehow, there's less crime, there's cleaner streets, people are unbelievably kind and generous. So how does that exist if there's no Christianity? How does that exist without the Bible, the Decalogue, Jesus? I've seen some comedians over here in Asia, also Chinese comedians, Japanese comedians, make this observation that, they marry somebody from the West, they go meet their parents are like, well, how do you know not to kill people if you don't have the 10 Commandments? And they said, oh, I didn't realize that you needed 10 Commandments to tell you not to kill people. We just know not to kill people because that's not civil. I just don't understand how that can exist in various countries without Jesus, without the 10 Commandments, without the Bible, and yet they know not to do the same types of things, and they seem to be safer and cleaner. So clearly it's not religion, it's not Jesus, it's not the 10 Commandments, not that those things are necessarily wrong, but it's not those things that create a better society. It's people deciding that we're going to be civil, we're going to be clean, we're going to be kind, we're not going to commit crimes. It's an issue of morality, it's an issue of culture. Religion's really a secondary factor to that as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it's because of the fact that I think we have, especially when we're looking at the Eastern philosophy, when we're looking at old Europe, when we're looking at all these areas, they have been around a hell of a lot longer than we have. They've been around, and people will argue, well, that's not true. They've been around like thousands of years before Christ even showed up on a blip, or Moses even showed up as a lawgiver.
Years.
I mean, we're looking at Hindus that were like around 8,000 years before Jesus arrived. And so you look at all of the things that have come about, all of the mythologies, all of the words, they replicate themselves in various religions. They replicate themselves, especially in the Abrahamic religions. But see, that's the thing, is a lot of the things we deal with today, we can't prove them in the here and now. And everything that's a mystery belongs to an ethereal realm that is intertwined with the material realm. You notice how the most spiritual religions have the most material things that they hold dear to them. You look at the Vatican, they have gold everywhere. You look at the Mormon church, they have temples everywhere. Because that's the thing, is that it's about the esoteric providing them with the miracle, the material. It's the esoteric mysticism that provides them with the material gains of the spoils of war. I mean, it's always been, it's like, it's just meaningful to a lot of people, and it's given to us. Our only option, what we do, is we either dismiss this knowledge that we access through subjective processes, or we say, I have faith. You always hear people say, I have faith. I'm taking a leap of faith here because I believe the biblical connections. I believe that the moon and the blood and everything else and all that has a meaning. Okay. They have some sort of meaning, and they apply to some sort of, and people react to what goes on up in heaven. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the theories that the moon affects us and that the stars affect us.
It's the oldest form of worship.
Yeah, it is. I mean, sun worship, moon worship. So, I mean, this is a journey that starts with a foundation of primitive worship of the stars, the moon, the sky, which eventually led itself to druids and pagans and witches, and then Christians. And then what's interesting, though, is we don't put into account that from the Christian faith comes initial doubt. And what happens is that when you have initial doubt within the Christian sects and in the Christian belief systems, we have people that go beyond the church. They still call themselves Christians, but they dabble. Okay.
Let's hold that thought, because we need to take, for the network, we need to take our break and then play a montage. Okay.
Okay, cool.
All right. We've got Clyde Lewis with us tonight. I'm Ryan Gable. This is a simulcast between Ground Zero and the Secret Teachings. And after we come back from break, we will also go through and look at the chat rooms and the emails, and we'll answer some of your questions and read some of your comments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We'll do one really fast as we go to break here. It looks like David in the chat said, Surah 9:5, I'm assuming that's the Quran, referred to as the verse of the sword, was read during Mamdani's Friday prayer service. The source characterized the verse as advocating violence against non-believers. Yeah, see, David, the problem is, quite frankly, people don't know what the F they're talking about. If you know what that verse is, which I do know what that verse is because I've read the Quran, it commands Muslims to fight polytheists who broke peace treaties. So if you believe in a monotheistic God, it doesn't apply to you. And if you haven't broken a peace treaty with Muslims, then it doesn't apply to you. So get the facts straight and stop repeating and stop posting and copying and pasting propaganda that's meant to drive people to war with one another. It's total and utter nonsense. This is The Secret Teachings in Ground Zero. I am Ryan Gable. Clyde Lewis, as I said, is with us tonight. We are going to play our little break here, and then we'll come back. If you're in the archive of The Secret Teachings, you will not hear this break because I will cut it out. And I haven't done this on StreamYard before, so I'm trying to figure out what the best option is here. We'll try this option and see if it plays well. We will be right back.
It's all over the news, food shortages and scarcity in the supply chain, and the reality is nobody truly knows what might happen in the near future. Hi, I'm Clyde Lewis, and I want to let you know that it's a good idea to plan ahead so you aren't caught off guard. Nothing's more important than having enough food to eat, and we're here to help. We highly recommend My Patriot Supply, America's leading emergency preparedness company. They provide long-term emergency food that lasts up to 25 years in storage. When grocery stores run empty or disasters strike, their foods will be there when you need them most. Act now and secure at least a 4-week emergency food kit full of tasty meals to provide 2,000 calories a day. They have dozens of emergency food storage kits to choose from, along with a variety of other survival products. If the government tells you not to go out, you can have the peace of mind that comes from being prepared. After you order from My Patriot Supply, your food will arrive discreetly at your doorstep. Prepare today, because time is short. Go to preparewithgroundzero.com. That's preparewithgroundzero.com.
Blood clots can happen to anyone. Up to 900,000 people in the United States are affected by blood clots each year, and 100,000 die from them. Blood clots don't discriminate. You or a loved one could be at risk right now. The good news is blood clots can be prevented. Knowing the risks and symptoms are key. On average, one person in the United States dies of a blood clot every 6 minutes. Don't let that be you or someone you know. Learn more at stoptheclot.org/spread the word.
Can you tell if the surfaces in this kitchen are crawling with bacteria that could cause chronic arthritis? Listen. Can't, can you? You can't see it either. Wash surfaces, utensils, and hands frequently with soapy water while preparing food, especially when handling raw meats or eggs. Raw food may contain bacteria that can make you very sick, or worse. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year, and roughly 3,000 will die. But you can keep your family safer by cleaning with soap and water as you go. Learn more about this and other important information. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov. That's foodsafety.gov. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Who might you save?
Your mother, your father, your husband, uncle, aunt, son.
Learn fast, F-A-S-T, the sudden signs of a stroke, and you could save
your friend, your best friend, teacher, boss, coach.
F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. F-A-S-T, face, arm, speech, time. That's F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. The sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in the recovery of
your neighbor, the waiter, a fellow shopper, a total stranger, grandmother, grandfather.
So learn FAST, the sudden signs of a stroke, then pass it on, because you never know who might save you.
Your wife, your colleague, teammate, mother.
Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
This is not a toy. It's a portal. From Ghost Hunter Apps, creators of the world's most advanced ITC software, comes SCD Archon, the next evolution in spirit communication technology. Fusing science with supernatural, the SCD Archon scans multiple frequencies, decodes anomalies, and reveals real-time spirit interaction like never before. Investigators around the world call it unbelievably powerful. Step into the new era of personal research if you dare. The SCD Archon, GhostHunterApps.com. That's GhostHunterApps.com. They are here. They're not coming, not visitors. They've always been here. The ancients called them gods. We now know better. They are non-human intelligence, biologic, machine, hidden among us, and they've been watching. From the author of UFO Highway comes the explosive new book, UFO Nexus. The truth is no longer out there. It's here. Discover what the insiders and researchers are calling the most revealing work on UAPs and NHI yet. UFO Nexus, available now at UFONexus.com. That's UFONexus.com.
You are listening to Ground Zero and the Secret Teachings Radio. That was a commercial break. We have so many different streaming platforms: Facebook, YouTube, X, other Facebook pages, groundzeroplus.com. I know that the audio doesn't come through correctly on those platforms, so I apologize for that. There's very little that I can do about it. Just that's the service, and that's what we have set up at the time. The Secret Teachings, though, airs Monday through Friday. The archive is at tstradio.info. That archive is where you can find the high-quality version of the show and not just this Friday stream. I also wanted to, I would normally play the montage coming back from break, but I wanted to make that statement so that you know what's going on here. We do have a montage that I will play, and we'll come back from that montage and we'll go back into the show. We'll answer your questions, and we will conclude the broadcast tonight within the next hour. So let's do that. Let's go to that montage, and we will be right back. Let's take a listen to this.
Well, somebody has to do something. It's the earth that hangs in the balance.
Well, what if this is his plan? What if we just can't see it?
You think God wants to destroy his creation?
It was important for the moral majority to be able to claim the authority of God for a partisan agenda.
They made it seem like, well, this is okay because this is what God wants us all to do. This is the way that we glorify God.
The end of time. When is that? That's right now. The next thing that's about to happen is the return of the Lord Jesus Christ. Everything that's necessary for this new world order is at the door.
I have done everything God has.
Major uncontrollable fires, the Bible said, will break out all over the world spontaneously. The sun and the moon will be darkened. Earthquakes so shattering that the islands of the sea will disappear. The 7 seas of the earth will turn to blood. World war so bloody that the blood of those who are killed in battle flows up to 200 miles to the bridle of a horse. When you see these signs, when you see nations against nation, when you see the moral collapse of America, when you see these things, the apocalypse is coming. We're called to be warriors, and we need you to get in the fight.
You are listening to Ground Zero and the Secret Teaching. It's really fascinating when somebody says that Iran is run by religious fanatics. I mean, you have to either at best be tone deaf or at worst be completely oblivious and unaware of your own self, which I think is, at the very least, that's a segment of the problem. You can't say that Iran is run by religious fanatics and then talk like that. You can't say that Iran is run by religious fanatics and then literally have White House pageants of prayer and have White House spiritual advisors who sound like they are clinically insane. Have you listened to the spiritual advisor from the White House? Have you listened to anything this woman has said? Take a listen to this.
Angels are being dispatched right now. Hamanda ata ata raka teda baka sanda ata ambo osa kata rite eke banda ata rike divi ashata. The angels have even been dispatched from Africa right now. Africa right now. Africa right now. From Africa right now. They're coming here.
This woman needs to be in a padded room in a straitjacket. Here's another one.
I walk on White House grounds. God walks on White House grounds. Every right and authority to declare the White House as holy ground because I was standing there, and where I stand is holy.
Wow, those Iranians are crazy. Here's another one. This is an Easter message from the White House faith advisor, Paula White. Take a listen to this.
And I believe that when you honor God on Passover, starting on April 12th at sundown through Good Friday on the 18th and concluding on Easter Sunday, you can receive these 7 supernatural blessings for you and your house. According to Exodus 23, God will assign an angel to you. He'll be an enemy to your enemies. He'll give you prosperity. He'll take sickness away from you. He will give you long life. He'll bring increase in inheritance, and he'll give a special year of blessing. You're not doing this to get something, but you're doing it in honor to God.
Well, you are doing it to get the blessings.
Realizing what you can receive.
For your special Passover offering of $1,000 or more as the Holy Spirit leads, you will also receive the beautiful 10-inch Waterford Crystal Cross. Don't miss your moment to release 7 supernatural blessings. And
I really thought that was AI, but it's not. That's the White House faith advisor telling you for $1,000 minimum, you can get 7 blessings from God. I mean, that's like someone charging, I've seen spiritual advisors in Sedona, Arizona charge $10,000 for a monthly session to clear out your chakras, or a meditative session where they hit you over the head with a stick. $1,000 and you get the blessings from God. I wonder what the context of that verse is in Exodus. I wonder if that applies to Jews or if that applies to Christians too. $1,000 for 7 supernatural blessings. It sounds like it's like an infomercial or something. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll throw in our Destroy Iran bundle. It's just so stupid. This woman should be in a padded cell. And she's not the only one. Here's the White House having their little prayer session.
We are honored to
And she's there too with her hand on the president.
lifting up the arms of our president. We pray for your continued blessing. And
Now, the thing is, prayer is not a bad thing. But if you are praying publicly and you're filming it and putting it on social media, then it's not really about prayer. And it's actually contrary to what you read in the book of Matthew. It's contrary to turning internally, turning into the self, closing the door. The closet is the word that's used, the translation, and doing it internally, which is also what the Quran teaches. It's also what the Bhagavad Gita teaches. In fact, prayer and internalizing those thoughts is precisely what yoga is. It's a unification of body and mind. It's a very, 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 very ancient concept. If you're doing that and putting it on social media, it's just kind of like people that do something kind for somebody in public and film it because they want attention. That alone is an issue, but considering that what the Bible actually teaches is oppositional to that, it's a bigger issue because it's kind of not actually that Christian. But, Iran's the country that's run by the religious fanatics. And people say to me sometimes, well, they are. It's like, well, again, I don't really care. The point is, so is our country. So is Israel. So, like, maybe all 3 of them are run by crazy people. All 3 of them are run by people that should be put in straitjackets. Then there's also that thing about Iran where, they have a pretty big Christian population. They do. They also have Zoroastrians, which is in part where Christianity comes from. One part. What Clyde was saying in the first hour and what I've been talking about on this show for many, many, many years now, I think is very similar. We've been saying similar things. Is it really the title or is it the lifestyle that matters most? And it appears to be the title that matters the most. Filming your prayers matters more than actually praying and receiving guidance. It turns out that everything and anything can be justified in the name of the tribal god, the tribal deity. $1,000, 7 supernatural blessings. Well, guess what? If you give me $2,000 tonight, I'll give you 14 supernatural blessings. Twice the cost, twice the blessings. We could undercut the White House. For $500, I will give you 12 blessings. I'll dance around. I'll get real sweaty, mess my hair up, start talking in tongues, shaking, and then I'll smack you across the face. $500, which, actually is a pretty good bargain because I've seen it a lot of New Age spiritual conferences where someone literally had some guy do this. This woman was sitting there, and I know how much it cost because when it was over, she paid the guy several $100s. It literally happened like this. I'm not joking. Sitting there looking at the guy, and he just looks at her, gets up really close to her face, and goes, ah, 30 seconds or so, and then was done. And he's like, now, how do you feel? Oh, it changed something. And then she paid him like $300. It's basically the equivalent of that. I mean, that is some high level grifting from the White House. Jackie in the chat says, what can I get for $20? You get half a blessing for $20. It's only half. You don't get the whole blessing. Need at least 3 digits to get the full blessing. I mean, isn't that kind of also like that's kind of sacrilege, ain't it? You give us $1,000 and we'll give you the blessings from the Bible. I mean, that is sick. That is really wicked. I don't even like. I am just so done with all this stuff. I don't even want to think about it. But I keep getting drawn back into it. Just when I think I was out, they pull me back in. Quote The Sopranos. Let's go back to Clyde Lewis. Clyde, what do you think of all of those lovely Iranian clerics that are just so crazy?
Yeah. It's snowballs and avalanches is what we're dealing with here, because all these doctrinal disputes are all the snowballs that come down the mountain. They turn into these big avalanches and they hit us from every angle. And like you were showing, the subset, it's basically a subset of evangelical Christians, and they see something positive in spreading this violence. You know, it's like it's the Christian Zionists who believe that Israel must vanquish its Muslim enemies to usher in the second coming of Jesus. So, I mean, here we have a small subset of people who consider the current war to be a prelude to the end times. Some evangelicals interpret passages from the Bible to mean that the Messiah is going to reappear when the Jews who scattered to the corners of the earth return to Israel. Once Jesus comes back, those who accept him will be saved, and everyone else, including Jews who've converted, will perish. Well, the Jews that haven't converted will perish and will be damned to hell. So, I mean, it's a... I don't know if people understand this, because it's like you're saying, Donald Trump sits unemotionally behind a desk outdoors at the White House Rose Garden. And around him, we got men and women dressed in suits and ties or in colorful dresses that raise their hands with mouths open directly in front of Trump. And there he is kneeling. I mean, it's crazy. And the attack and the death toll, I mean, all that. They're excited about that. They get really excited about those things. Yeah. And that's the thing that's really amazing. And I don't know why. You take a look at how many died. You look at President Emmanuel Macron condemning it, saying this could lead to world war. They don't care. It's the fringe that are embracing this theology. It's the fringe Muslim that embrace this theology. And I mean, there are outspoken proponents. There are Mike Huckabee. There are others. Yeah.
I wanted to comment on what you just said. I think it's really important because a lot of people think that I'm like a quote Muslim apologist, but I want to make this really clear. What you're alluding to, what you're speaking about, and what I was saying a moment ago, it's really critical to understand this point, I believe. The point is this. There are Muslims who believe in the literalisms of their eschatological belief, which is that Jesus will return, he will team up with Mahdi, and they will go and fight the Antichrist, which will be established in Jerusalem. They will fight the Jewish New World Order, if you will. That's part of the eschatological belief of Muslims. Now, I know that, Christians might not know that, but I know that because I've read, their beliefs. I've read their Quran. And so if you create the optics of Armageddon for the Christians and the Jews, even if the Muslims didn't have that literal interpretation, now they probably are going to. And so, in other words, where there might not have been a problem, now not only have you created a problem, but you've awoken a sleeping giant. You've told Islam, this is the end of the world. Get your armies ready. We're all going to fight. So now you're not just starting a war with Iran. You've started a war with 2 billion Muslims from the United States to even here in the Far East. There's a handful in Japan and China and Korea. Like, it's a declaration of war, not just against Iran. It's a declaration of war against all things and all beliefs that are oppositional to Christianity and Judaism. It's a declaration of war on the world. It's
Well,
insane.
yes.
That's the conditions that it creates.
We're looking at a subset that's getting a lot of attention, and people believe that the subset is the rule. It's not. I mean, we need to understand that we live in harmony every day with Muslims. We live in harmony every day with those who are doctors and computer people. There are those subsets that wish to believe in this fanatical stuff, and they push the fanatical types of things. And this is the thing that gets the attention. It's like with COVID. COVID gave some people an excuse to be assholes. I mean, it's just, not everybody was that way, but it just seemed like those who were that way, you just wanted to kill them. You want to beat the hell out of them and say, leave me alone, let me live my life. Don't tell me how to wear a mask. Don't tell me to do this. But see, that's the thing, is that every sign, symbol, watchtower, you name it, comes out with, it's like, I think I sent you a picture. I don't know if you can put the picture up or not, but I sent you a picture of Donald Trump riding into Iran, riding a black fire horse. And I thought that was interesting, considering we talked about the Longma and how, the disruption is going to create a dragon-like horse that's going to come in and destroy everything. And so there's Trump. I mean, and that's a coincidence, right? Or are there people who know of these esoteric types of symbolism, and that disruptive events bring about? I mean, who follows the Chinese zodiac? Well, not me. Not the West, because we have God. We don't need the Chinese zodiac. But then again, in the West, when all this happens, under Christendom, people are confident that they have the truth. And so therefore, that gives them an excuse to get rid of what they see as the unfit. Those who do not believe are the unfit. But that's the question I have for people who are so fanatical about this. I mean, is it wise to push the nuclear buttons to test Christ returning? I mean, if I push these buttons, Lord, and we blow up stuff, you're going to come, right? And that's where we see the Christianity, like other belief systems, they've tried to browbeat people into believing that, that that's the only option, and the only option is either join us or die. And that's what Muslims do. That's what everybody does. Join us or die. And we will. And what's interesting is that all of this is being led by a reality TV show host, billionaire, and a former Fox News reporter who's a Secretary of War. Think about that.
It's so true. It's so
our Secretary of War is a former Fox News commentator.
A drunk one, but yes.
Yeah, a drunk one who has tattoos on his body that represent the Templars, back to Friday the 13th, the Templars, the cross of Jerusalem, which makes him this literal fanatic. He's a fanatic. Anybody who tattoos those things on their body, I believe, are fanatics. So, I mean, they're not anointed by God, not at all. And
I don't think the Iranian clerics have tattoos on their body. I think that's probably against the law in Islam.
And then when we're saying, oh, well, Trump's Mashiach, or we're saying, these Hegseth is anointed by God, whatever happened to the first commandment? Thou shalt not have any other gods before me. Idolatry, when you go and you're like, the grounds of the White House are sacred ground. Oh my God, that's such an idolatrous thing to say.
Isn't idolatry also the idea, like if you were to position the idea of God as being the self, as being the spirit, as being the soul, which is the son of the Father, which is the universal Godhead, wouldn't that mean that an idol is anything externally from the self? So that would mean anything that you perceive as being an external God would be an idol. So that would mean that the images of Jesus, the images of God, and any religion would all be idols to the soul that's within you.
Well, I remember back when 9/11 happened, there were like pieces of the building that were cut and placed on planks of wood, and they were taken to elementary schools, and they'd bring them out into the middle of the auditorium, and they had kids line up to basically put their hands and pray on them.
Oh, I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys understand what you're doing here? You're taking a tragedy, and then you're taking something that is not even supposed to be worshipped, and you're bringing it there for people to adore. This is something that, I don't know if people realize what they do. I don't think, they understand that, it's like, why didn't they bring a magic 8-ball into the room? All things point to yes. I mean, it's like, it's no different than water witching. It's no different than crystals being used for guidance. It's the same thing. And, and then you have your moral compass, your still small voice, and does it tell you, hey, are politicians the ones that I want to live my life up to? I mean, are war planners, do they have a moral compass like I have? I mean, can they start and complete Armageddon at will? And do I support this? If I am supporting it, am I supporting it because God wants it, or am I supporting it because it's an imperative? That's what you need to ask yourself.
I have something I wanted to read you. I read it on my show, The Secret Teachings, relatively recently. I wanted to kind of recap this very briefly. This is a copy of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon, and he describes the rise of Christianity within the Roman world. Now, you don't have to agree with it as a listener, but you need to understand the context of the time and what was being done and what was being said and what was believed. Let's listen to what Edward Gibbon had to say. He said this. He said, there's a couple of them here I could read. The Christians, they felt or they fancied that on every side they were incessantly assaulted by demons, confronted by visions, instructed by prophecy, and surprisingly delivered from danger, sickness, and from death itself by the supplications of the church. He goes on to say, they believed that the lame walked, the blind saw, literally, by the way, the sick were healed, the dead were raised, demons were expelled, and the laws of nature were frequently suspended for the benefit of the church. And by church, he didn't mean like the Roman Catholic Church. He just meant the early Christian followers, teachers. And so, in other words, what Edward Gibbon is saying here, and the argument he's making, is that the reason that the Romans, the general public, and the government had such an issue with Christianity is because they saw these people as insane. And the Christian cult welcomed everybody, which might sound like a good idea. Sure, we welcome everybody. Everybody can be saved. The problem is, in the traditional mystery systems, the mystery schools, the ancient teachings, if you will, the secret teachings, there were prerequisites for joining. You had to abstain from certain practices. You couldn't drink alcohol. You couldn't eat red meat. You had to go into seclusion, and you had to seclude yourself from people. You couldn't have communications with people in the earlier stages. You had to go and meditate in or pray in private. You don't tell people what you're doing. It's an internal thing. So at the time, that meant that Christianity had no prerequisite to join. So mostly thieves and murderers and criminals joined the Christian movement, and they obtained their salvation instantaneously because of the title, and not because of any decision they made to change their ways, not because of any kind of probationary period where they were able to prove that I'm not a degenerate anymore. And so the church, the early church, was filled with a bunch of degenerates and criminals. And the so-called quote-unquote pagans had an issue with this because and this is not just documented in Gibbon, this is documented in, virtually every history book of the subject. The pagans saw these people and said, well, they don't have any morality. They don't have an ethical guide. They don't have a moral compass. This is really evil. And it's telling, because what happens is if you think about it for a moment, you realize, wait a minute. So the Christians just accepted everybody. The pagan gods did not, which means that the pagan gods would not just forgive you for having been a murderer and a thief. And that is actually a really interesting thing, because that tells us that the Christian cult really was founded on the very thing that we're talking about today. Zealots, psychopaths, people that are not good human beings founded the Christian cult, and then they placed all of their crimes onto paganism. It was really the pagan world that said, you need to have some kind of morality to be introduced into these traditions, these mysteries.
Look at the evolution, though. The evolution has shown that what we have is we have a label that is universally said to be, a moral compass. And I'm talking this in theory. I'm saying that most Christians, they go to another Christian and they believe, well, if you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, we should be Christians together. We should come with the benefit of knowing that Christ is King and that He's a God, and that we all have to be good and we all have sins that we have to, take care of. But see, we assume with that moniker, and anyone who's a part of the same tribe, whether you be a Muslim or a Jew, you assume that you have this moral compass. And if that wasn't the case, then you wouldn't waste time arguing over what the right thing to do is, you see. And that's why we argue over it, because we think, well, don't you have a moral compass? Don't you? And that's where you're talking about your crazy people, because It's always the idea that there's a right and a wrong in the moral sense, and then something happens where everything changes, and that is, immediately we wake up, we have a new other that we have to say is evil. We go after them, and then something happens where we don't stop and question our moral compass. We don't listen to the light of
It's just
Christ or the small
assumed.
voice. It's assumed. So you have to ask yourself, wait a minute, is the United States correct in attacking Iran? Is Israel right for doing what they've done? Are we right? Is our minds in a set of, being Christ-like? Does it make it right? Does might make right? And where are the turning of the Christ-like cheeks? There are no turning of the Christ-like cheeks because this is war. We think the reason the other person's moral compass isn't pointing them in the right direction because they either aren't listening to their moral compass, in which we try to get them to do so with exhortations and saying things like, well, there's no other way around it. You got to listen to your heart, and you can't be heartless, and the golden rule and all that other nonsense. So we see that, listen to your heart, listen to your soul, listen to your moral compass, and let's hope the moral compass is not so damaged that it does the right thing. Because, look, we always say, well, their hearts are in the right place, but yet the moral compass is still pointing in a different direction than good. And so, maybe their hearts are in the right place. Maybe they really do think that they're saving us from the evil Muslims. I don't know. But ask yourself, are you relying on your intuition? Are you thinking to yourself, Pete Hegseth, the Fox News guy, is his heart in the right place? Are we talking about a guy who was tattooed with the cross of Jerusalem that has a Templar attitude that if you remember, you and I, back in the day, we talked about this, and we said, he seems to have this attitude of a crusader. We must be going for the new crusades. Look where we are now. We're back to the new crusades. And most people just shrug their shoulders and say, well, guess our moral compass is just so point in that direction. So we still think that our moral compasses are designed to point towards truth, goodness, and the right action, because why? We're American Christian. And that's the bottom line.
American Christian exceptionalism. I mean, quite frankly, that terrifies me more than any other religious system. I don't see that Muslims in my community when I lived in the US were ever causing problems. The problems that I always had with people were American Christian conservative types who condemned me to hell for not being part of their cult. That is one of the biggest problems we have culturally in the United States, where nothing is really founded on the idea of individual behavior and being a decent person and being moral. It's just founded on a title and an identity. And that means it's hollow. It's a shell. It has no meaning. It has no value. And people use it, and people are themselves used by other people that are more powerful than them, play on their beliefs to start wars. It's insane. I don't want to have to be involved in any of this. I don't want to participate in any of it. And you're kind of forced and compelled to do it because that's the dialogue. That's the
Or,
conversation.
or in your case, it's not that you're forced to have to do it. It's have to correct inaccurate information. You provide critical thinking and critical missing information like you did when you were talking about the part of the Quran that was being quoted. So it's hard to genuinely get an opinion on what has changed. So we attack with ad hominem. No one wins an argument with ad hominem because apparently no one believed the danger of powerful witchcraft or powerful mysticism or memes or the idea that words matter and that people are, that little voice, that conscience, the heart's whisper, it would be the voice of survival of the fittest if it weren't for the idea that it's supposed to be doing good and being kind. But no, it's the idea of the evolutionary instinct, the inner voice telling us something is good. And now it's just an instinct pointing us towards the behavior that we say what is fit and unfit. And we believe the Muslims are unfit. So therefore, our conscience is saying, well, the behavior is wrong, but the end justifies the means. And as I said, stuff just got real. So now that we know this, we'd be able to replace all of our language about good and bad, right and wrong, by just saying it's either fit or unfit. Is this something that fits into my life, or is it unfit? And the fact that that right and wrong couldn't help but collapse into just fit and unfit is unreasonable, because immediately you're saying, well, if you say that, you're sounding like Herbert Spencer, you're sounding like Darwin, you're sounding like a number of the eugenicists of the world that don't care about human life. But then it's different, though, if you say that God wills it. It's just an amazing sociological, anomaly, if you will.
We have a listener in the chat. We actually have several that have commented, and we'll get to those here shortly. But we have a listener in the chat who had pointed out, this was Moose Girl. She said, "What happened to having discussions before bombs fly and war breaks out?" And this is an interesting question slash statement, because when you take away the religious stuff, Clyde, and you just break it down to like like in the United States, what is legal, like who can declare war? Congress can declare war. And we get these games that are played with. It's not a war. It's a preemptive strike. It's not a preemptive strike. We're doing it for regime change, and then that changes, and now it's just going to be indefinite. We're not sure what's going to happen, and we won, but we didn't win, and we don't really know what's going on. Take away the religious elements and just look at the basics of like politics, or the basics of like the rule of law and who has the authority to do what in the U.S. government. And we've gone from having a considerable portion of the U.S. population who followed the ideas of, say, Dr. Congressman Ron Paul. That's all kind of, it feels like, evaporated, or those kinds of commentators just don't have the kind of attention that they once had. So now if you say, well, maybe we should ask Congress, even if it's just a rubber stamp, let's at least ask Congress for approval. And instead of consulting Congress for the invasion of Venezuela or Iran, Trump, in the case of Venezuela, went to oil companies. In the case of Iran, he went to defense contractors. He didn't go to Congress to ask them if they can get a declaration of war based on the evidence that we were going to be attacked by Iran, which we weren't. And every one of our government officials, from Hegseth to the president, told us, and Rubio too, told us something completely contradictory. They can't even get their own story straight. So what we get out of this is that it's not even a religious issue. It's just the basic fundamental way that the republic is supposed to work becomes, I think that's the core problem. If you can't get Congress to declare war, then we shouldn't have a war, even if it's just a rubber stamp. And when you point that out, the kind of response you get is like going back to the Bush years. Oh, so you want Iran to win? No. I might hate Iran. You don't know what I think of Iran. I just want Congress to declare war. Even if it's a rubber stamp, let's at least go through the motions. So even if you take the religious element out of this, Clyde, it still breaks down to a matter of like, what authority does the government actually have? And if I disagree with illegal decisions, that makes me a terrorist? It's like Bush 2.0. It's like a time loop.
Yeah, I mean, it is a time loop, because I was reading and discussing the idea of the Gregorian calendar and I guess the odds of having these numbers show up and the odds of having these events taking place in space and all this. And you know what? It's really odd, but it happens every 400 years. There's a 400-year cycle that goes on, and people after a 400-year cycle basically annihilate each other. We go back to what happened in 1626, 400 years ago, and we have a really bad pandemic that happened, and there were still people who were being tried as witch hunts. Witch hunts were big in 1626. Pandemics and being afraid of disease were big in 1626. And so we're no different than we were in 1626. We still have our witch hunts. We still have people afraid of pandemics and plagues. And it's just odd the way we see these cycles happen. And then there's a huge, I guess, sifting of the life material. And then, of course, somehow, somewhere, survival or survivability happens. And there's always someone there. I mean, God likes witnesses, I guess, because there's always someone there to say, well, this is how God saved us. This is how we were saved. It looks like we're the ones that are the fit, and the others were unfit. And that's how it goes. That's what all boils down to. It replaces all the language of good and bad to justify the act. And that's the thing, saying, well, I think this is right or wrong. If we change that to fit and unfit, we go back to Darwinian morality, like I've said before, the fact that right and wrong collapses in the face of evolution. So this is where good Christians who reject Darwin is espousing the thoughts of Darwin. If you go to any Christian, you say, hey, what about Darwin? They go monkey crazy. They say, oh, the monkeys, and we didn't evolve from apes. But then they don't talk about the survival of the fittest and the idea of selective natural selection, and the idea that there's one group that's better than the other one, and they fight to get rid of fit and unfit individuals. So, I mean, does God want us to leave it up to the Darwin imperative? Well, if Christians want to support the idea of taking, a large country with a huge military to destroy a more unfit country, then yes, you certainly are participating in apocalyptic Darwin morality is what's going on.
I also feel that based on what we are seeing, or based on what maybe more importantly we're not seeing, is that this conflict is not going the way that the U.S. military expected it to go,
No.
nor the U.S. government as a whole. I believe that what is happening here is that Iran is a lot more powerful than we've told our people, and we've told our military probably. Most of the stuff that they have that we want to destroy, that we were told last year we did destroy, but now we can't destroy it. We have to send troops in possibly because it's too far underground. But yet last year we destroyed it and we shouldn't have had to have a war, but now we have to have a war to destroy it again or something. Anyway, whatever the case might be, we're not seeing very much like we did with Iraq. Like with Iraq, it was clean, cut and dry. They broadcast it on TV. I mean, it was like the Super Bowl starting and we're off, and it was that I watched it on television as a kid when we invaded Afghanistan and Iraq. And I feel like this is completely different. I mean, it's the same ideas of weapons of mass destruction, terrorism, and just lie upon lie upon lie. It's a little different this time because Iran is not those countries. Iran is a massive country, and the topography is a lot different. And they have some very advanced technology. They are some of the smartest people in the world, IQ-wise, and in terms of overall education. They're not a bunch of people that live in caves. Neither were the Iraqis, by the way. This is like if you wanted to consider the Iraqis or the Afghanistan, the situation to be like they were all in a bunch of tunnels and caves like primitive people. Okay, well, the Iranians then would be in high-rise luxury condos like you would find in Miami. They're extremely advanced. This is not like a joke. Our military, Clyde, the White House is putting up, I don't know if you've seen this, like just the most ridiculous propaganda where there's like a football game and someone gets hit catching the football, and then they cut to a scene of a bomb blowing up in Iran. Like that's the level of propaganda our government's going to convince us that this is going well. There's something off here about all of this.
Yeah, I guess we could put it to the test and say, hey, is there anybody out there listening to our voice? And are they telling? And if I was to tell you, get on your knees tonight and pray for Armageddon, would you do it? And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that would, because their moral compasses are shot. And that's why I'd say to myself that when you're hearing people praying, or at least saying that they're going to be responsible for hypnotizing the Eschaton, I say to them, well, ask all your Christian followers if they're willing to get on their knees and pray for Armageddon. And I bet you that the vast majority would not do that, that only a subset would do that. And it's because, as you say, they're pretty much crazy. They're nuts.
Let's go to some of the comments that we've gotten. And if you're listening right now and you'd like to make a comment or send a question, you can do it on the Ground Zero Plus chat. And you can also do it on YouTube or anywhere else you're tuning into the show tonight. We are live this Friday the 13th, Ground Zero, The Secret Teachings, a kind of simulcast. Clyde Lewis is here, and I am Ryan Gable. Got some of these comments that I saved in the chat here. Jackie says, I keep hearing those of Christian persuasions stating that the Muslims are taking over. However, I can't seem to get proof of such statements. One person being a mayor doesn't equate with a takeover. I don't know if you have any comments on
that's
that.
America-centric. That's so America-centric. I mean, you need to look at the world. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about the world. They're not talking about America. One mayor that's Muslim, you're right, does not, count for anything. But you look at the populations of France, you look at the populations of England. In fact, Liam had told me that he was very surprised when he got to England how many people are there that are Muslim. He said it was very eye-opening. And so, you're looking at England, you're looking at France, you're looking at most of Europe. So no, it's not about, one mayor. It's not about Elon Omar. It's not about that. It's not about Sharia law in the United States. It's about the population takeover that some people, most people who are wanting to, like I say, they want their tribe to survive. They find it a threat.
Well, all tribes are a threat, and this is what to Jackie's point, this is what I don't understand. I agree with you, Jackie, is that, yes, one mayor is not a takeover, and if people are concerned about, quote, unquote, "a takeover of their culture, their country," whatever, by, quote, unquote, "Muslims" in this case, why can't I be concerned about Jewish influence and control? Why can't I be concerned about, "Oh, there's too many blacks, there's too many whites." Like, doesn't that kind of reinforce the leftist argument that conservative Christian type people are really like the Klan, that they're really racist, they're really bigoted? I mean, they've literally got you convinced to sit there with a straight face and with a cross around your neck, loving Jesus, backing the idea that we got to get rid of all these brown people and all these Muslims. Like, you've become the exact thing that the liberals have accused you of. Do people not see that? Clyde, you still there? Oh, it looks like Clyde dropped off there for a second.
Yeah. Oh,
You there? Hello, hello?
somebody was trying to. Yeah, I'm here now. Are you there?
Yes,
You
yeah.
there?
Did
Yeah.
I don't know
Okay.
what you heard. I don't know
No, I
what you
didn't hear
heard
the
about what
question.
I said,
It
but
dropped. It dropped out. It dropped out.
well, what I was saying is that to make a statement such as we got to get rid of the Muslims are taking over, etc. Number one, why can't I say, well, there's too many Jews or there's too many blacks? Like, doesn't it kind of reinforce the leftist talking point when they accuse the conservative Christian people? They say, like, you're racists and you're bigots. Like, I don't
Right.
think that, but when you act like that, when you sit there with a cross around your neck and say, oh, well, we got to get
Yeah.
rid of those Muslims and Arabs,
Right.
that you become the thing that the liberals accuse you of, and you say, no, I'm not like that, and then you
Oh.
actually are.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen Get Out, that movie.
Yes, I've seen that movie.
The whole idea behind that movie is called liberal bigotry. It's like the most uncomfortable white guy in the black party is the one that says, "I voted for Barack Obama because I believe in him. He's a very clean cut, very articulate man." They're the ones you look at and they go, "Yeah, thank you." Um, that's the problem. Is people a lot of times they don't understand who they're fighting. They don't understand who they're hating. They just hate them because they're told to hate them. And that's the problem. If we were to understand more, if more people were to pick up the Quran and read it and understand it and talk to the clerics directly, I mean, I'm going to tell you this. The doctors and the dentists that are becoming Muslim, that are becoming doctors and dentists are very strong right now. And I can tell you that if they wanted to kill us, they could. And they could kill us in the hospitals. They could kill us in the doctor's offices. And they're not doing it. Now, why? It's because not all Muslims are crazy and they're not wanting to kill you. Same with not all Christians are crazy and want to kill you. It's just there's a subset that are just nuts and fanatics, and they're just they actually go nuts. They become something more of an animal than they do a human being.
Right, and as you just said, Christians do too, and I mean, that's pretty much the entire rabbinical class, and I think a lot of this is just a projectionism of Christian and Jewish extremism. They project it onto Islam because, oh, it's scary and it's foreign and they're brown and they don't believe what you believe, when actually they do actually believe what you believe as a Christian. And just because you're a Muslim doesn't mean that you're brown or that you're Arab, who are also Semites, by the way. There's a ton of Christians in Iran. There's a ton of Christians in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think Tucker Carlson pointed this out too. He said, do you think that the US government is making sure that we don't bomb Christians in Iran if we're really targeting the country because of their religious zealots that run it? No, we're just dropping bombs indiscriminately. We hit a school with a Tomahawk missile. Trump lied about it. Hegseth lied about it. Then they changed their story, lied about it again, changed the story again. We targeted a school and killed children because that was part of the sacrifice to start the war. We're not more moral, and we're not better, and our God is not better, and our religion is not better. There are religious zealots in Islam, Christianity, and my God, in Judaism. And I don't want anything to do with any of those religious zealots. If you want to have a conversation and you want to talk to me about what Jesus had to say or what Muhammad had to say, or even though these kind of different people, but in terms of who they supposedly are, people say, oh, Jesus is God and Muhammad's just a prophet. Like, yeah, he was, but Jesus was also a prophet. And I'm pretty sure a listener sent me this named Tom. Tom said, what happened to Christianity? Christians used to say that Jesus was the Son of God. Now they believe that he is God. There's been a transition, there's been a shift there. And quite frankly, I think that that shift is Israeli propaganda. It's the same reason that they keep telling you that Christ is king and Trump's going to rededicate the country to God, because it's all just a play on this eschatological belief.
Well,
It's the idea that if we're dedicating ourselves or rededicating ourselves to God,
mhm.
God is going to protect us in this war. God is going to help us, and we have to do this for God. When really we're doing it for defense contractors, oil companies, and foreign countries.
I get a lot of crap when I point out that I think it's unnecessary to call Jesus Yahweh or God Yahweh. I don't particularly care for that. And I don't know why. I just think it's virtue signaling in a lot of ways. And they say, well, the reason why I say Yahweh, it makes me closer to him. How? It's like, well, if I just call, if I want to, call Jesus because I feel closer to him if I use, Mexican or Spanish, languages. I mean,
Yes.
I don't get it. It's like, people next you'll be hearing people speaking Aramaic because they think it's cool. I just, no, just be basic here. Just do the basic love thy neighbor. Do the basic treat people as you want to be treated. I mean, do the higher law. That's what Jesus wanted. But, if you really look at Jesus, he's not good for America because he doesn't turn the other cheek. I
He's
mean,
the reason for the treason.
yeah, he turns the other cheek. And if we were to say, hey, let's turn the other cheek with regard to Iran, he would say, what are you? You're some god awful communist? I mean, I don't
Let's
get it.
let's put that into perspective. If let's say that Jesus physically, literally returns, he comes down on a cloud like Goku in Dragon Ball Z, and he comes to the White House, and they say, Jesus, we got a microphone for if you want to speak to the people. And Jesus goes and speaks to the people, and he says, my children, I've returned. And there's three people in the audience. There's a Christian, there's a Jew, and there's a Muslim. Maybe four, maybe there's an atheist too, but there's the three Abrahamic faiths represented. This isn't a joke. I'm just an example of trying to convey a point.
Mm.
And Jesus says, my people, I've returned. What do you think the Christian's going to do? The Christian's going to say, oh my God, Jesus, I love you so much. Thank you for, sacrificing yourself and saving me. You know what the Muslim's going to do? The same thing, because they believe in Jesus. They're just not going to say, well, thanks for sacrificing yourself, but they're going to say, hey, Jesus, are you ready? Are you ready? Because we got the Mahdi here and we're ready to go to war against the Antichrist. And Jesus, in their eschatological belief, will say, yep, let's do it. Let's fight that evil. What's the Jew going to do? Unless they're a Messianic Jew, they're going to spit on Jesus and they're going to deny him and say that you're not chosen. It's not just a matter of being God. It's that Jesus told the Pharisees that your power no longer is valid. That's why they rejected him. It wasn't over even spiritual issues. It was over earthly authority. So if you have those three figures standing there, Christians are going to accept Jesus, Muslims will accept him, kind of halfway, and the Jews are going to reject him entirely. So who
Yeah.
are your friends in this if you're a Christian? I'm not sure who the enemy necessarily is, but I know that your friends are not, on average, the Jewish cult. It might not be the Muslim cult either, but I know it's not the Jewish cult. So none of it really makes any sense to me. Maybe we should just stop making it about religion and just make it about, like, what's the rule of law? What applies equally and fairly to all people? And if you can ban Islam, you can ban Christianity. So good luck with arguing to ban the Quran,
Yeah.
ban Islam, ban public prayer. You don't think that's going to apply to Christianity? The same people arguing about that are the same ones arguing about how, oh my God, in Britain, over in the UK, they're arresting people for praying on the streets and having Bibles. Yeah. And you're arguing for the same thing in the United States, except you're arguing for it to be done to Muslims. And if it can be done to Muslims, well, guess what? Then they're going to come for you. It's going to be done to you too.
Oh yeah, what comes around goes around, and it's always like things seem to backfire. Here's a question for Clyde. Please, with respect, Pastor Paul's a bit of a zealot, is he not? No, he is actually a person who is very level-headed, and if he does believe that, if he does support Israel, then that's his prerogative. I'm not going to criticize him for that, and he's not going to go out and he's not going to do crazy things. He's going to discuss things like a very level-headed person that he is. I love Pastor Paul. He believes his beliefs, but he's willing to listen to others, and he's willing to reason with others. Having discussions with him are very enlightening. Going to his meetings and his revivals are very entertaining. I mean, the guy is probably one of my favorite pastors of all time. And there are many that, I've known over the years, but he just seems to be the one that he clicks on all cylinders because he loves what he does and he loves delving into the same things I do. And he speaks to them objectively, but his belief system he takes privately into his world. He doesn't want to force it on anybody. So no, he's not a zealot, I don't think.
I don't know him, so I can't speak to that. But I do have some other questions in comments in the chat here. And I also wanted to say that we've had like maybe 3 people. Another one named Jennifer just said, "I'm done with the both of you." You know what kind of, and then they don't respond and tell me why they're done, why they're upset.
Why are they done? I mean, what is it that we've said? I mean,
well, I'm a Satanist.
You have your opinion, I have my opinion.
Well, I'm a Satanist, Clyde, and an Islam apologist apparently for reading the Quran, but I just think it's kind of like when there's no response given, it's like that old original Family Guy bit, one of the original jokes.
You're a phony.
Well, that too, but it's like I think Seth MacFarlane had hand drawn it for the first episode, and it was a drive-by argument. "Oh, Reginald, I disagree," and then drives off with no response.
Yeah.
At least give me a reason. And one person said I was a Satanist, so at least we got something out of that. But anyway, let's go to the comments real quick. Robert Landa said, asked about the 6 fingers of Benjamin Netanyahu in the video, and saying that they're using AI. He doesn't have 6 fingers. He's got 5 fingers. It's called a shadow, and it's a single frame of the entire video. Maybe he is dead. I don't know, but that's not an AI video. He has 5 fingers. You can count them very directly. I actually think that's probably foreign propaganda as well.
Yeah. There's always anti-Jewish propaganda, and he's got 6 fingers. Well, what does that mean? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, they're saying it's AI. Well, because the AI can't make your fingers look right.
How many years have we been told that Putin has cancer and he's going to die soon? That didn't happen.
Same propaganda.
Yeah, it's the same propaganda they did with Osama bin Laden, and then he did die, but then they didn't want to admit it because then they'd lose their war.
Yeah, they never translated his final interview for Western audiences either until decades later. In his final interview, he said, "I got no issue with American people. I just have an issue with the government and what they've done to my people." It's like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense.
But isn't that always the case, though? It's like, people don't have a problem. Well, I'm sure there are people that do have problems with Jews, but there are people who mostly have problems with Zionism and Israeli fundamentalism, just like they have problems with Christian fundamentalism and subsets that are just crazy. I mean, you're looking at the same type of people, and I'm an ex-Mormon, and I just get irritated whenever I hear somebody say, "Well, Mormonism is a cult." Well, define that. What is a cult to you? Well, they use cult as if it's something bad. Well, no, it's the idea that there are dangerous cults, and there are cults that do provide for people. And I'm just saying that, Mormonism is as much as a cult as Catholicism is, as much as Christianity is. It's that we're all gathered around one particular person and we get knowledge from that particular person.
It comes from the Latin cultus. It just means worship. So anything you worship is a cult.
Right.
By definition.
It's part of a cult. And, people just have their damn ideas, and you're just saying to them, these are ideas that I don't know where they came from. But if you're going to stand on this hill and fight against something that, is, I don't know. I sometimes don't understand why people want to stand on a hill and fight for something that's just so thick and so arbitrary. And there are better and bigger things to deal with here. And that is, be good to yourself, be good to others. And please, let's examine our moral compasses. If you're a Christian, be a damn good Christian. And if you're a Muslim, be a damn good Muslim. And if you're crazy, people will see it and they'll say that you are, because it's just the lunatics and the stalwarts. You know, you have to make your decision as to who's what.
Some other comments that we got in the chat room tonight. Well, I think I already read Moose Girls, so we'll skip over that one. Jackie says, doesn't the Bible state the second coming of Jesus is not going to be not going to be pleasant according to Scripture?
Yeah, it's going to hurt. I said that to to Pastor Paul. I said I said to Pastor Paul, I says, yeah, you can talk about the second coming all you want, but I know it's going to hurt. And he laughed. But yeah, it's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. It's not something I'm looking forward to. I don't care if you're Christian or whatever. It's like, I'm not looking forward to people and their eyes falling out of their sockets and birds chomping on their flesh and Jesus showing up in garments that are stained with the blood of the non-believers. I'm just not into that. I don't believe it. I don't want to believe it. I don't want to believe that's going to happen, but it just seems like this is what we're working towards.
Well, we're working towards a literal interpretation of it. I would bet my eternal soul that it's not literal. I'm pretty sure that the idea of having horrible earthquakes, like you heard in the montage, and fires all over the place, this refers to the internal self. You know, consciousness is always and has always been represented by fire, and earthquakes are, you know, ground shattering things. You know, like when something bad happens in your life and you have to wait for the dust to settle to be able to address it. Well, you have internal earthquakes. Your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, things are shaken. You know, your faith is shaken. That's an earthquake. You know, the fire of new ideas and new thoughts. That's consciousness. That's awareness. That's awakening. The spilling of blood is the spilling of the animal. That's the animal self giving up carnality. I'm pretty sure it's symbolic. And in fact, I know 100% for sure it's symbolic, because the ideas that we call eschatology, the study of that, the end of the world, is present in every culture. And it has nothing to do with Jesus in all these cultures. What it has to do with is the changing of the seasons, and how that relates to the changing of the self, the transmutation of the self. And it's also alchemy as well. I know for a fact, and it goes back thousands of years. In fact, it goes back to the shamanic cult tens of thousands of years before Jesus. I would bet my eternal soul on it, personally. I'm very certain that that's the case. It's not going to happen literally, but they can create the visible optical conditions of it to make people think it's happening,
right,
to drive us into a new world.
Well, I believe that the truth is that it's time that we as individuals, regardless of what we see ourselves at, whether we see ourselves as spiritual or Christian, Muslim or Jew, we need to analyze our moral compass, and we need to understand that religion is not political, and it should never be political. I always believe, and then people will again argue this point, but when it says you shouldn't take the Lord's name in vain, that would mean don't use God or religion in order to
That's right.
in order to justify your bad thing and your bad deals.
That's right. We're just about out of time here, Clyde, but you're totally right. I think it's a great way to end the show. And what they're doing in the White House and what Hegseth is saying, that is taking the name of God in vain. I'm going to read this Bible verse and then approve a missile strike on a school. That is taking the name of God in vain.
It is. I mean, when you're mixing politics and God, that's not what God wanted. God wouldn't want to be political, and he still doesn't want to be political, I think. But men want to be political. They want advantages that you don't have. They want to be able to basically exploit your ignorance. And then the people who have had these beliefs for some time, not knowing that they've been fooled, that's the hard part, is biting that bullet and understanding that the truth is going to set you free, but it's going to piss you off in the process.
Well, we're out of time for groundzeroplus.com. So if you want to say your goodbyes there, and then I'll probably go on for a few more minutes on the other side.
Well, as I say, keep the faith. I'm very much okay. I have no real problems. The only problem I have is occasional bouts of pain. Walking has been a challenge, but I just did stairs yesterday and I passed my stairs test. So I'm able to step upstairs and step downstairs. I don't know if some would be harder than others, but there are a lot of things that I have to work on, because I didn't know that your kidneys basically regulate a lot of things in your body, including balance and a few other things. So I'm better. I'm doing well. I'm thinking well. Today was the first day in a long time that I actually sat down and wrote a long monologue, and I hope to do that again soon and keep up the pace that I had before I was sick. And with all your prayers and all of your support, that's happening. Don't stop supporting Ground Zero because I'm not on the radio. I'm on the internet. We have a Ground Zero Plus is probably the most advanced place for all of your needs for paranormal and what have you. We have the on air paranormal app. All you got to do is push a button, instant radio right there. We've got Fringe It, which is a remarkable social media stop. We got all kinds of cool things coming in the future. It's going to be your one-stop place for all things paranormal. It's even bigger than, I don't know, I cannot compare it to anything else. It is a staple by which other people are going to follow, and I'm very appreciative of what's going on. And I hope that you subscribe, and it keeps us going. It keeps the best happening, and that's what I think we have. We have the best.
I also wanted to mention, as I'm sure they're going to cut the feed for Ground Zero Plus, and I don't know if you heard these, Clyde, but Professor Zhang, the Chinese professor who's gone very viral for his explanation of what's going on in the Middle East, he has now told Piers Morgan that there is an eschatological agenda, and he's basically repeating what you and I have been saying. And Carrie Prejean, the Catholic who got kicked off of the Religious Freedom Board for expressing her religious freedom, because there's some religions that are higher in the hierarchy, apparently. She's also saying the same thing, that they're using, people like Hex, that they're using the idea of the end times to bring about this conflict.
And we said it was going to happen for some time, and people are saying, oh, nobody nudges God. They don't have the power. Well, if you can take a bunch of subset of Zionist Christians and have them believe that what they're doing is just for the Armageddon, it's going to bring about Christ's return, you need to re-examine what you're thinking, because no man knows the time nor the hour that Jesus shall return, and no man is going to force Jesus into coming to a planet that's lost. You can't do that. You just won't.
Yeah,
do
you
that.
can't force Jesus into coming back in the same way that you cannot, as a mortal person, unveil Isis. Isis says that no mortal man hath ever me unveiled. That's because if you are mortal and you will die, and you're an animal and you've not figured out you're a soul and you live eternally, then no mortal can uncover the secrets. But if you realize I'm a soul, I live forever, I'm a spirit, I come from source, then a non-mortal you will be, and then you can unveil Isis. And that's why nobody knows when Jesus comes back, because it's an individual thing. I don't know when it's going to happen to you. You might go your whole life and never make the realization, never have the realization. You might realize it tomorrow. We need to really reassess our literalisms that we believe. Clyde, thank you so much for doing what
Thank
you
you.
do.
Thank you. All right. Have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye. Feel better.
Bye. Okay.
Bye-bye. All right, there goes Clyde Lewis, groundzeroplus.com. I know that they are, I'm not sure when they'll cut the feed, but groundzeroplus.com is done. We'll continue for just a moment here. I'll play these clips, and we'll be done with the Secret Teachings tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. TheSecretTeachings.info is the website for us. You can find the full show archive there. I also wanted to mention to you that I have my new book, Protocols of Goyim. The new book is available. I also have spent a considerable amount of time, to my own detriment, going through my Occult Arcana book, my big occult encyclopedia, where a lot of this stuff is explained, and making it the correct format for a hardcover edition. And I completed that last night, so I need to get it uploaded. So sooner than later, I'll have a hardcover, like a very large hardcover, really nice edition of Occult Arcana with all new enhanced images. And I didn't really add much to it. I added a few things. I added a little section on yoga, but it's nothing new, if really that you're missing. But it's going to be a hardcover, reformatted, and all that. It'll be coming out very soon. Let's listen to Professor Zhang talk about what we've been talking about to Piers Morgan. Funny, I mean, I've talked about this. Clyde's talked about this for years. Piers Morgan never had us on. Let's see what he had to say.
Right. So actually don't say the real power base.
And by the way, I like this. I actually like this guy a lot. I think that he's Brilliant.
Is Israel. What I say is that the real power base are a collection of secret societies that have an eschatological view of this war. And these secret societies include the Freemasons, which are now called the Rosicrucians and the Knights Templars. They include Jewish organizations called the Sephardim Frankists, who are embedded in religious movements called Shabbat Lubavitch. And then you have the Jesuits. You have a collection of secret societies. And they believe that a war in the Middle East would start a process that would culminate in the end times and the return of Jesus, the arrival of the Jewish Messiah, the building of a one world government. They have different eschatologies, but a lot of their time frames do align. So where they converge is that there has to be a war in the Middle East to kick things off. This war in the Middle East will lead to the defeat of the American Empire, and this will lead to the culmination of the Greater Israel Project, where Israel is able to control the Middle East from the Nile to the Euphrates. Once the Greater Israel Project is in place, it will transform into the Pax Judaica, which is an AI surveillance state. This will eventually lead to the war of Gog and Magog, the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the building of the Third Temple, the return of the Jewish diaspora to Jerusalem, and the arrival of the Jewish Messiah or the Antichrist. So they have the scripted out. And unfortunately, a lot of world events are conforming to this script.
Doesn't that sound like an episode of The Secret Teachings? Doesn't that sound like an episode of Ground Zero? Doesn't that sound just like what The Secret Teachings got kicked off of a recent radio network a couple of years ago for saying? Now it's so clear that it's being discussed on Piers Morgan. Here is the woman who is not allowed to have her beliefs because she's not Jewish, Carrie Prejean, saying to Tucker Carlson something very, very similar. And note that, again, this woman is a Catholic, and at a discussion as part of the Religious Freedom Foundation, or whatever the hell they call it, she's not allowed to express her beliefs because Jews literally disagreed with her.
Biblical. What are they going to? What's scary, Tucker, is these people like Paula White and Ted Cruz and Dan Patrick, they believe that there will be, the Dome of the Rock will be torn down and they will rebuild that third temple. They're saying it now. Look at Pete Hegseth. There will be a rebuilding of this temple.
Oh, I know.
It is heretical and it is anti-Christian.
I know that.
Because they're going to bring in the animal sacrifices again. And the most anti-Semitic thing that they believe is that 2/3 of the Jews are going to be slaughtered. That's what these people believe. They're just manipulating them and using them. They don't really care.
Yeah, that's also extremely accurate. That also sounded like The Secret Teachings. That also sounded like Ground Zero. That also sounded like my books. That also sounds like what Bill Cooper said. How did I know it before any of these people said it? Because I just saw the same things that she just noticed apparently last week, that Pete Hegseth is a crusader with tattoos that wants to have a holy war against Islam. He said as much, so I just kind of took him for his word. Maybe I shouldn't have, because you usually don't trust alcoholics, but I took him for his word. You tattooed on your body, I'm pretty sure that you're committed to it. So that's how I knew. He said it. I know that's how Clyde knew, because Hegseth, again, said it. Rubio has said it. Trump has said it. They're insane. They're religious zealots. And the funny thing is, for people that like to call me a Satanist or whatever, I'm not a Catholic, but I agree with what Carrie Prejean is saying, and I think like, oh, there's a Catholic, there's a Christian I can sit down and have a conversation with, because they're just a rational person. It's a rational thing. It's more than rational. It's just a literal factual thing. It's like the sky is blue today. It's blue. Maybe where you are, it's not, but outside, I'm looking out my window right now. It's blue. It appears to be blue outside, the sky. Oh, there's some flowers blooming across the street I can see. We have little sakura trees, cherry blossoms here. They're finally blooming over in this part of town. So they're just there. Like, and it would be like people getting upset. What are you, an apologist for cherry blossoms? Like, no, they're just blooming. It's just an observation. It's just like he tattooed on his body. They're talking about it. Rubio said that the Iranians are run by religious freaks, and it's like, but even if that were true, so is our country. You are too. I keep telling people that it's really important to maybe pick up like, in all seriousness, I think it's really critical. Like, if I was the president, I would instruct, like, this wouldn't be happening, but if I was the president, I would instruct the public. Um, we need to get the public reading Joseph Campbell. We need to get the general public reading. Well, we'll start with Joseph Campbell. We'll start there and we'll see how it goes. But we need to get we need to, like a fireside chat tonight from the White House. I'm going to explain to you what a fucking metaphor is, because 97% of the population doesn't know what a metaphor is. I've told the story where I talked to my neighbor in Tucson. This guy's like in his 60s, almost 70s, and he was a Christian, and he agreed with a lot of the stuff that we had talked about, conversation in passing before. And he asked me about, this was before I moved over here to Japan. He asked me about what I had thought of Trump, and I said, I think he's controlled by Israel. I think he's going to take us to war with Iran. Yeah, I told my neighbor that. I wonder what he thinks now. And my neighbor said, well, why do you think that? And I said, well, because of X, Y, and Z. And I said, but, ultimately it's a metaphor. And this guy is like 60, 70 years old. He looked at me and he went, what's a metaphor? What do you mean a metaphor? I said, that was actually the first time in my life I ever realized some people didn't know what a metaphor was. I just assumed everybody knew what it was. And he said, I don't know what a metaphor is. I said, are you serious? And I almost like forgot the definition myself for a second, because when you're confronted with that kind of idiocy, it's just like, I don't even know what to say. And then you explain it, and he's like, well, I don't think that's true. It's like, well, but it is. It is. Well, no, it's not, because it's not what I believe. All right, but it's still true. And these arguments that we have, like when I say, like, even Clyde brought it up earlier, the Hindu cult is 8,000 years before Christ, at least. I mean, that's when they arguably, depending on who you consult, some say they wrote the Vedas and their scriptures in like 1500 BC. It's very likely that is inaccurate for lots of reasons we don't have time to get into. It's likely that they stem back at least 8,000 BC, something like that. That's when they wrote them down. Prior to that, they had been told orally for thousands of years, which is also interesting because modern Muslims, a lot of them try to remember the entire Quran, and this is what the Indian mystics would do too. They would memorize all the scriptures, which is crazy because the Quran is small and these scriptures are like a giant shelf of very heavy, large books. But like the traditions, the ideas that we have, it comes from thousands of years before. And when someone argues that, well, that's just all irrelevant now because Jesus came, it's like, well, no, you're misunderstanding. When Jesus came, he made irrelevant the Jewish sacrifices of animals and the spilling of blood, and made irrelevant the institutional control of the leadership. He did not make irrelevant that 8,000 years, I think probably somewhere in the middle of the road there, not at best, not at worst, somewhere 8,000 years. And even if you want to go mainline history, 1,500 years before Jesus, people were teaching the same thing. And in fact, there's obviously a theory that Jesus went to India because his teachings were so similar to the Brahmins. They were so similar to the Hindus. They were so similar to what comes out of the Far East. And that doesn't undermine Jesus. It reinforces Jesus and what he taught. And we know that for sure. We know it reinforces it because it's the same thing. It's not any different. It's like, again, reading about prayer. What does the Bible say about prayer? Go into the self. It's in the book of Matthew. Go into the self and pray close the door of the closet, and pray internally. You don't make it a spectacle. Same thing with the Quran. The Quran teaches the same thing. But if we go back way before that, here's the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita says this, among many other things. I'll read you, this is chapter 6:10. A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. Oh, so basically he should fast, pray, and do it in seclusion. He should kind of do what Jesus did for 40 days? Correct me if I'm wrong. It was 40 days or something. Jesus fasted and went into the wilderness and was tempted like Buddha was under the tree, tempted. This text, this particular one, is like the free one that they'll give you. This was written at minimum 1,500 years before Jesus. If we're going to say, I wouldn't even say maximum, I would say closer to the maximum, 8,000 years before Jesus. Now, that doesn't undermine Jesus. It just reinforces that what Jesus taught was maybe a little bit more understandable. So, like, again, let me read this to you. A transcendentalist, you'd have to even look up what that word means. You know, the transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. That's a lot. That's a lot to kind of digest. So you'd have to study what the context of that is in the Bible, and you'd find that what's being said here in 6:10 of the Bhagavad Gita is very, sporadically placed in the Bible, and then you cross-reference and you'd find that the Bible is telling you the same thing, and that Jesus is in the New Testament is teaching the same thing, just in different, like, you have to pull different statements that he made together, and then you're going to get what the Bhagavad Gita says. And even if you had to stretch for it, like, if you get to the same destination, then it really shouldn't matter how you got there. The vehicle doesn't really matter. Let me read you this too. This is the interpretation, translation of what this particular text means. This is really, really important. It says this: Krishna is realized in different degrees as Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which would be the Father. Krishna consciousness means, concisely, to be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Kind of sounds like something you hear in church. But those who are attached to the impersonal Brahman or the localized super soul are also partially Krishna consciousness, because the impersonal Brahman is the spiritual ray of Krishna. And Krishna is the Christ, and as a spiritual ray, he's the Son of God, which is the Godhead. Thus, the impersonalist and the mediator are also in direct Krishna conscious. A directly Krishna conscious person, say that 3 times, Krishna conscious, Krishna conscious, Krishna conscious, is the utmost or the topmost transcendentalist, because such a devotee knows what is meant by Brahman and Paramatma. His knowledge of the absolute truth is perfect, whereas the impersonalist and the meditative yogi are imperfectly Krishna consciousness. Yeah, we're all imperfect, and we need the saving of an external figure, or, well, it was an internal figure, but the idea of an external figure. We're not perfect. Jesus knows the absolute truth. They even capitalize it in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is the truth. Nevertheless, all of these are instructed herewith to be constantly engaged in their particular pursuits so that they may come to the highest perfection sooner or later. The first business of a transcendentalist is to keep the mind always on Krishna. So you should think about Jesus and have a relationship with him. One should always think of Krishna and not forget him even for a moment. Concentration of the mind on the Supreme is called samadhi, or trance. In order to concentrate the mind, one should always remain in seclusion and avoid disturbance by external objects. Jesus went to pray and all that in the temple, and he also tells you to do it privately. He should be careful or very careful, to accept favorable and reject unfavorable conditions that affect his realization. So avoid things that are going to, like, I mean, I think a lot of Christians would say, don't watch porn, don't fight with people about things, and just, turn the other cheek. I think that's a misunderstanding of what it's supposed to mean, but you can get the idea. And in perfect determination, he should not hanker after unnecessary material things that entangle him by feelings of possessiveness. All these perfections and precautions are perfectly executed when one is directly in Krishna consciousness, because direct Krishna consciousness means self-abnegation, wherein there is very little chance for material possessiveness. That's just one page out of 670. In other words, let's put it this way. This book, the Bhagavad Gita, thousands of years before Jesus, and then the Bible, which is a combination of, the Jewish stuff and then the later Christian stuff. Let's say it like this. This is the academic course, the Bhagavad Gita, and as original as a source as we can get, because a lot of it was probably lost in cataclysmic events that occurred in the far ancient days of human history. And the Bible, this is the SparkNotes version. Academic course, this is the recap. Academic course, this is the SparkNotes version. And the Bhagavad Gita, as I see in the chat, Jackie says, this is just one book. The Vedas are like so big that I would need another bookshelf. And the Bible is, it's made up of a bunch of different books and 2 different testaments, but it's also missing a bunch of books that were stripped out of it by the institutional authorities. So, I'm gonna bet that these books are teaching the same thing. As a matter of fact, we could even pull up the Zendavesta. It's a very, very rare book. It's probably the most expensive book I own. It was several dollars, put it that way. And if you read it, it's going to sound weird. It's going to sound different. But if you read it from the very beginning, it basically says what Genesis says. It talks about the creation of the world. It just does it in slightly different terms. Let me read it to you, just a little bit. This is the Avestic creation. And this would be what the modern Iranians are descended from, by the way. Ahura Mazda, which would be Ormuzd, as opposed to Ahriman, who would be the spirit of darkness. Ahura Mazda, which always did sound like a car. I'm thinking like a Mazda. Ahura Mazda spake unto Spitama Zarathustra, saying, first, I have made the kingdom of light dear to all life. Well, that sounds strikingly similar to God said, let there be light. I cast my shadow, Angramanyu, who is all death. Well, that kind of sounds strikingly similar to the Spirit was on the waters. The second of the good kingdoms, which I, Ahura Mazda, created, was Ahura Preserver. Now that in Hinduism, and there's a specific meaning that's not so literal in the sense of what I'm going to explain this to be, but the second of the good kingdoms and the preserver would be the physical world, because the sun preserves, the sun illuminates the light, the kingdom of light illuminates the physical world. So in the SparkNotes version and like the elementary version, Ahura Preserver would be like the sun, it would be the physical world. So God created the world. Thereupon came Angra Manu, who is all death, and he counter-created Deva Spoiler. So that would be like Lucifer falling from heaven. That would be like all the bad things and temptation. And it's interesting because it also says here in verse 5 that of the third of the good kingdoms, which Ahura Mazda created, was eternal life, which means that he created light. Well, it's not a he, but it created light, and then the physical world. And then interestingly, it appears to be that they then created man, because man is eternal life, the spirit that has its own experience on an individual level. I mean, call me crazy, but it sounds like the Zendavesta is talking about precisely what the Bible is talking about in Genesis. And I don't understand this argument where people say, well, oh, what are you saying? The Bible copied it? Or people say the opposite. They're like, well, the Bible just copied it. I don't really think either one of those arguments is valid because, like, if it's a copy job or an interpretation of older texts, wouldn't that just kind of mean that it's preserving those old ideas? Wouldn't that kind of mean like it's based on something real? Wouldn't that kind of mean like it's still valid? So, like the people that argue that it's just a copy and paste job, I don't agree with that in the sense that it's meant to imply that it's like irrelevant. The people that get upset about it are kind of missing the point. And it's a very simple point to see that if you're rejecting the idea that anything in this Bible book came before, then you're rejecting the foundation of this Bible book. And if you're rejecting the foundation of this Bible book, then isn't that kind of like sacrilege and the opposite of what you believe anyway? So all of it is very confusing. None of it makes much of any sense. And since I'm pushing on through the entirety of this third hour here, I wanted to read you something else because I saw Amber in the chat. She had said she really enjoyed the yoga show that we did. Let me read you this from the Bhagavad Gita. This is chapter 2, if I remember correctly. Yeah, chapter 2, verse 48. Listen to this. This is really interesting. Perform your duty equipoised, balanced, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. Now, when you've listened to zealots like Michael Knowles or Alex Jones or others tell you that yoga is evil, I want this to be a very, very clear statement, so I'm going to speak very slowly. Just a moment ago, I explained that if you're rejecting the similarities between the Bible and what came before, then ultimately what you're doing is rejecting the foundation, so you're rejecting the Bible. Well, when you say that yoga is evil, you're rejecting the whole, as a Christian, you're rejecting the whole point of what Jesus was teaching. Because what yoga actually is, it's more than just a stretch and bend. Because when you stretch and bend, you're also breathing. Now, personally, I don't like yoga. I'm not a fan of yoga. I've tried it. Longest relationship I had before I was married, she was for temporarily worked some other jobs, but she was working to become a yoga instructor, among other things. And so, like, she was a professional, and she showed, I can't get into yoga. I don't like it. I don't think it's evil, but it's more than that. Yoga is getting your mind right. It's going inside of yourself, like Jesus taught, and praying there. And when you do that and you align the body and the mind, the physical and the spiritual, if you will, or the physical and the non-physical, masculine and feminine, then what you're doing is you are creating the androgyne, if you will. You are creating the caduceus. You are harmonizing the self, and harmony calms the beast, which is the carnal nature. So you have patience. You breathe. You stretch and bend in a specific way. It's good for the body. It's good for the mind. That's yoga. And ultimately, you know what yoga means? Sanskrit for union. That's it. It's funny because there's no God per se over here in Japan, or even really in the Buddhist tradition. But in Japanese, the word that could kind of be taken to mean God, which it's not in everyday conversation, but if you read the very few books that priests write about Shintoism, it's musubi. And musubi just happens to mean to bind, to bring together. The word religion is Latin for religare, comes from religare. You know what religare means? To bind. Do you know what the jihad is? Jihad is Arabic for the struggle. That's what Yisrael is in Hebrew. Israel is the struggle with God. Kind of sounds like musubi and yoga. Kind of sounds like jihad and Israel. Kind of sounds like all of these things have the same meaning. Kind of sounds like religion has the same meaning. Being bound. Like Islam. You know what Islam means? It comes from asalama. It means to, not a union, but it means to be submissive. And people say things like, It means to be submissive. They're gonna make us submissive to their Sharia law. You know, why don't you shut the fuck up and open a dictionary? Asalama means to be submissive to God. And that's what all of it means. That's what yoga is, being submissive to God. The God is, you know, you can connect with the spirit, aligning your body and mind. And, you know, I've not been sure of a lot of things in my life, and there's a lot of things I'm still not sure of, but there are some things that I am sure of. I am sure that what I'm saying is factual because every objective source and the original source material, as close as you can get to it, especially this Zendavesta and this Templar Bible, there's no like modern contemporary attempt to convince me of something. It's just like a random passage that just happens to be what's in the Bible, the Zendavesta, etc., and happens to be the etymological origin of all these other words. Islam, Israel, jihad, musubi, yoga. I think even Brahma means something to that if I mean divine wisdom and divine law. And so I'm pretty certain about that. That's why I would, you know, in effect, I'm not making official statements, but I would like in effect, I would bet my eternal soul that it's a symbolic thing. And that when you reject it as evil, I think that it's actually quite satanic. And this is also why I know this might be where those of you who have decided to listen and agree with me, you might disagree here and get off the train. But I believe that the concept of Jesus Christ being the Son of God physically is like a blasphemous thing, and that's why I wholly reject, you know, the Christian, the contemporary Christian, whatever it is. I think that that's a blasphemous thing. I do. So, like when you hear, you know, the president say something like this, let me play this for you. When you hear the president say that we're going to dedicate the country under God again, like, what's that supposed to mean?
This exciting renewal this morning, I'm pleased to announce that on May 17th, 2026, that we're inviting Americans from all across the country to come together on our national mall to pray, to give thanks, and we are going to do something that everyone said, like, that's tough. We're going to rededicate America as one nation under God. You know, a lot of people.
Yeah, but like what God? And that's not really getting at the root core of the problem, because the idea that our country is a nation under God does not mean that you can tell people what they can and cannot believe. It kind of means the opposite. It was kind of the whole purpose of the Declaration of Independence, among other things. So it's kind of oppositional to the founding of the country and to the idea of a universal God to say, we're going to dedicate the country to God. And then you got to Pete Hegseth reading Bible verses while he presses buttons to kill people. Not only is that insane, but it's kind of a destructive thing. Like you're worshiping the forces of evil, not the forces of good. I'm not the one that says or believes these things. It's people like Trump and Netanyahu who believe and say these things. I've yet to hear the Ayatollah ever say something like that. In fact, the last time I heard the Ayatollah say anything was several years ago when he defended Jesus while the Christian world allowed the Jewish world to mock him and criticize him. And that would seem to be okay because, you know, God's chosen people or something. You know, plus playing on the Christian faith and playing on ignorance is a foreign psychological warfare operation. And to combine the Jewish God with the Christian God is to combine two inherently opposed things. It's being done to justify genocide and mass murder and religious-backed holy wars, or religious-backed mass murder and holy wars in the name of God. I mean, it kind of only fits the Old Testament God, which was kind of rebuked by the New Testament teachings. So I don't really understand any of this. Like, it kind of seems like it's the opposite of what people believe or should believe. I'm very confused by all this. Very confused by all of this. And so you end up getting to a point where you just have to admit what's the real problem. Here's the real problem. Let's listen to what Ted Cruz, who, I mean, I just do.
Although it is being used online in a way that is meant to say, screw you, Jew. It is being used in a context very directly to say, I hate Jews, and that's almost an online code word.
Well, what's he talking about?
Christ is king is I hate the Jew. Is that
So Christ is king as I hate the Jews, right? So that's, do you kind of realize what's happening now? And just so we're on the same page here, you notice that I have a variety of different books that I've read from tonight in the last 20 to 30 minutes. What Ted Cruz is saying is that if you think Christ is king, then you're an anti-Semite and you hate Jews. Okay, well, that's what this book would also fall under that definition, which would mean that, they're going to ban this book. So yeah, and I'm not a Christian, but I would like to be able, if I travel, I just read that if you travel to the United States, you have to show 5 years of social media history. Did you know that? That's going to be, I don't know if they've started that yet. I think they do. They're going to, at least by the time we visit the U.S. again, they're going to start that. So, maybe I want to bring a Bible with me when I come to the U.S. Maybe I want to read something on that 10-hour flight. Am I going to be able to bring this book with me? Or am I going to have the TSA stop me and say, under IHRA regulations, we have to confiscate this text? Yeah, how about you go fuck yourself? How about the Jews go fuck themselves and the Christians go fuck themselves and the Muslims go fuck themselves? If I want to read the fucking Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Zindavesta, if I want to read anything that I can pick up, open the book, look at it, and process it, then I'm going to read it. And no one's going to tell me that I can't read it, which is, I think, where a lot of people are also confused, is that I would actually fight to defend having possession of this book, where most Christians would actually lay down and let this book be burned or banned or both because of Jews or something. How about you just mind your own business, and if I want to read this, I'll read it. This is really interesting, by the way. This is a Templar Bible. Let me read you what it says here about the crucifixion. When Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but that rather a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. See ye to it. Then answered all the people and said, his blood will be on us and on our children. It kind of sounds like Pilate washed his hands and said that Jesus was a just person. I've read the actual verses. He says that he said, the Romans don't find there to be anything wrong with Jesus. He hasn't done anything wrong. And then the Pharisees said, his blood will be on us and on our children. So I guess if I wanted to bring this book to the U.S. and read it, I would have to probably remove this page and remove the other page. Go fuck yourself. You might be confused. Well, you're not a Christian, Ryan. Why would you be so combative about this? Why would you hold onto the Bible so tightly if you're not a Christian? Maybe you're just lying. Maybe Ryan's lying because he just doesn't want to be grouped together. No, I'm not lying. I'm not a Christian. The idea that Jesus is the true incarnate physical Son of God, I think, is the most blasphemous thing that a person who's religious could believe. I do. But I would still defend this text. It's kind of like that. I think there's a reference to something like that in that movie. What was that apocalyptic end of the world movie? I think Whitley Strieber maybe wrote it, or Art Bell wrote the idea for it. It was The Day After Tomorrow. It was The Day After Tomorrow. And there's a scene in the library when they're trying to survive from the freezing temperatures. And one of the guys, I think he's an atheist or something, he grabs a Bible and he holds it. And someone asked him, like, do you believe in God? And he's like, no, I don't believe in God. But, this text is like if the world's destroyed, this text is going to be the last remaining, piece of evidence for like human history in the West. Like, this has to be preserved. So, yeah, I'm going to preserve it. And if you want to take this away, fuck you. If you're a Muslim that wants to burn it, which I don't think Muslims want to burn the Quran, piss off. If you're a Jew who wants to burn it, piss off. And the funny thing is, the people that want to burn this, on average, are Christians. Christians want to burn the Bible. They want to ban the Bible. They want to make it illegal to read the Bible because they don't worship this God, whatever this God is to them. They worship a foreign entity. They worship false idols. And that's what's running the United States. That's what drags us into war. That's what kills people endlessly. It's disgusting. Yes, Patriot Girl, Jesus Christ could do nothing without God. But that's because Jesus Christ is the soul, and you wouldn't be anything. You would just be a husk without the soul. Some people have been asking about recommendations for books. Saw some people comment on that. That's a great question. So let's respond to that. I would recommend, let's look at some books here. I've got them on my bookshelf. Let's look at some books, some good books. I would recommend just to start. Just go to like Barnes and Noble or thrift books online. Just get like the simplest, cheapest, like this, for example. This is Hermes House Publishing. I paid $5 for this. The Ultimate Encyclopedia of Myth. And it's got it's got all the old pictures. It's none of this modern AI stuff. It's got stuff from museums. It's got paintings. It's just everything from all over the world. And then it has little tiny sections on the different gods and goddesses and deities and whatnot and symbols and from all over the world. I would just get something like that to start. It's like $5. This book actually is really heavy because the paper is really heavy colored paper. So it's kind of it's an inconvenient book if you want to take it with you, but something like this, $5. I paid for that. And just start there. If you're not really aware of anything and you want to start from scratch, just read myths. As Manly Hall said, myths are more often than not, they are the something to the effect of they are the rituals of the mystery schools. Like the myths themselves were told for the general public and for generations to pass them down so that this knowledge wouldn't be lost. So if you read the myths, you'll find very quickly that there's a lot of correlation because it's all part of an older tradition. Where that tradition comes from, people could argue, but read that. This is a must read. You have to read A Hero with 1,000 Faces. I mean, if you haven't read The Hero with 1,000 Faces, you're missing like a critical key to understand what we're talking about. So that's a good book, and that's another book I paid. There were so many this book is used, by the way, when I bought it, and it looked brand new. It's only a little roughed up because when I came to Japan, I brought this with me and I read it over here. It was brand new. I bought it at bookstore in Tucson. They have like a whole Joseph Campbell shelf, and I think it's because people buy the books and they never read them. Most of the Joseph Campbell books I find at the used bookstores, I don't think anybody's ever cracked them open. Like the pages are still kind of stuck together. It was $5 too. Well, I think maybe this was $5. Yeah, $5. That was $5. So $10. You got two good books there. Here's another one. This one's a little more advanced, though. This one's a much, much harder read. The Golden Bow. This is more like college level, but if you want to you can get small versions of this book. Again, like maybe $3. Maybe $3, I think. This was $40 because I bought the college textbook version, hardback. But you could buy, I mean, they have copies of this I've seen copies of The Golden Bow at thrift stores before. It's like $3. If you buy a new copy, you're maybe paying $15 or $20. Here, this is a great book. This was a New York Times bestseller. I think mostly because the author was one of the heads of Random House, so he was very well connected and had a lot of pull and pushed his book out. And because people might say, "Oh, New York Times bestseller, I can't trust it." I'm like one of the only people that's interviewed this guy. I love Mark Booth, and some people really disagree with his assessment. It's more of it might be a little theosophical, but he explains, kind of like Jordan Peterson does, myths and how things correlate. This is the secret history of the world. Now, they republished this in 2 different versions. They republished it in a glossy hardback, which is like $30, a soft cover, which I think was, well, this was the new publication, so I paid full price for a fresh copy. But when I was looking for copies, this book is maybe $8. So, I mean, what are we up to? We're under $30 for all these books so far, I think. 5, 8. It's 18. Maybe you paid 10 for that. It's like 20, $30. Couple other ones. Oh, this, you have to read this. This is classical mythology. Before you read Joseph Campbell, you got to read Edith Hamilton. They used to use this to teach kids in school when we still taught children in school. This is such a great book. And again, most of these books, you're like, I mean, this book was printed probably 10 years ago, this particular copy. I paid $7 for it. It's a hardback, and it's brand new because nobody ever opened the damn thing. You read this book, and you can find softcover version, like literally $1. I have seen this book at more book. I've even seen this book at bookstores in Japan, where they like an English section. It's like $1. It's like a college level course on mythology. There's also, here's a bunch of other ones. Here's Bullfinch's mythology. I'm not a big fan of Bullfinch, but you could read Bullfinch's mythology. I paid brand new. This is 15 because it's like a unique cover, but I think I paid $8 used for this. What else do we have here? Anything else? Let's see. Well, we'll just, other than the obvious ones, the secret teachings of all ages. I mean, that's pretty much it. Little things like that. And then, of course, you can get the Bhagavad Gita. What did I pay for this one? $6. But that was before I learned, when I had bought this, that's before I learned that you could just go to the temples or go online. They'll send it to you for free if you pay for shipping. And there's a temple in Tucson that just gave these out for free. It's kind of weird. It's kind of interesting. I mean, yeah, church really about Bibles and stuff like that, but it's amazing. Like, this kind of knowledge used to be kept in the heads of people and they didn't write it down. And now we've gotten to a point where they just give this out for you can just get a copy of this and it sits on shelves. There's probably, if you go to a bookstore in Tucson, I went to every bookstore in Tucson repeatedly because I'm obsessed with books. There had to have been 10 copies of this book in every store I went to, and they were all brand new. And but they're used, but they're brand new. Like, no one's ever really opened them or highlighted anything. It's if you're interested in myths, like, read about myths. If you're interested in symbols, read about symbols. If you're interested in religion, like, read about it. Read about it. One thing I don't understand is this, like, open the Bible and read Proverbs chapter 15. Answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. See, that's important. Well, what does it mean? It means that answers turn away wrath. Yeah, but I don't understand what that's supposed to mean. It's just like, it's like when a baby just makes noise. What does it mean? It's just like they're learning. It doesn't mean they're not, and they're communicating, but like, what is it? What's the context? What is it? It's just weird. It's like, and kept the feast of unleavened bread 7 days with joy. See, I have to eat bread for 7 days. It's very stupid. This is what we do. We do it with the Quran. Oh, the Quran, they said to kill all the people that aren't Muslims. It takes 2 seconds. Go to the internet, type in Surah 9:5. That's it. And then read about it, and it only applies to polytheists, and it only applies to people that broke peace treaties. It doesn't either way apply to Christians. They're going to kill us, that says in Surah 9:5. First of all, you don't know what the fuck Surah 9:5 is. You've never read the Quran. Second of all, if you read it, you're not going to understand it like any other text unless you have the context. And third, To provide the context, it commands Muslims to fight polytheists who broke peace treaties. You know, like the one that the Jews broke in Mecca repeatedly and attempted to assassinate Muhammad. And so the Jews got expelled from Mecca. Oh, it was a shanda. No, you tried to kill Muhammad, so then the Muslims drove you out of their land. I learned that writing my new book, Protocols of Goyim. I was reading about Muhammad, some hadiths, and I came across this story about Muhammad and founding Mecca. And I read it. I was like, whoa. Hold on a second. They targeted the Jews in Mecca because they plotted to kill Muhammad. Oh, so there was a justifiable reason. They plotted to kill Jesus and succeeded by getting the Romans to do their dirty work for them. And then they plotted to kill Muhammad too. Well, now it makes a lot more sense. Find the context of it. And people do that with Muhammad said this. Okay, well, if that's just the basis of it. Muhammad said this one time. Okay, great. If he said that one time, well, he also said a bunch of other stuff, like don't kill women and children. That's a hadith. In fact, it's 2 or 3 hadiths. In fact, it's on the book of jihad. Do not kill women and children. Now, frankly, I don't like Muhammad. I think Muhammad was probably an idiot. I think Muhammad was probably a moron. And I know that Muslims would probably be very upset at me for saying that. But I think he's a moron because what he was imparted, or what it was imparted to him, rather, is the same that's been imparted to people throughout the ages. And he interpreted it apparently and reportedly literally. So it's like the jihad is an internal battle, and he interpreted it as let's go kill people. But even when he said let's go kill people, he explicitly said don't kill women and children. So I'm confused why people kill women and children. I'm always confused why these so-called terrorist attacks are always on children, which makes me think that they're not really terrorist attacks being carried out by a foreign element. They're like an internal thing that's happening. Let's read another one. Let's pick up the Bible here. Let's see. Thus saith the Lord. Well, he saith. What's that supposed to mean, Ryan? I don't know. He said it. It saideth. Saith. He saith. What else can we find in this book? Here, I'm just going to close my eyes. Go to bibliomancy. Close my eyes. Finger on a text. And it came to pass when she came to him that she moved him to ask of her father a field. See, if you're married, you have to come to him, and then you have to ask her father for a field. I don't understand. And to be fair, I see Nate in the chat. This is a great observation, Nate. Nate says, as much as I love you, Ryan, you definitely don't give the Bible a fair shake. And with all respect that I think is due to you, Nate, I think you misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying the Bible. I'm saying people that interpret it in the same way that I can just pick up the Bhagavad Gita, open it up, and be like, all right, it says here, thus the wise living entity's pure consciousness became covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. And I can just take that out of context and be like, that means we have to burn away all the lust. You can never have any kind of attraction to another human being. It's evil. Or I could like read the context and see what it actually means. It's the people that look at it and they're like, well, see, it says here that God saith, so that means I can kill people. It's how you interpret it. And it's for positive or negative, because you could say, well, that God saith, or you could look at it the other way and say, well, I don't really care what God said, and it says a bunch of stuff in the Bible, and so I don't agree with any of it. It's like, it goes both ways. And yes, the mockery that you're sensing in the chat it's not mockery, it's extreme sarcasm, because I feel like I'm screaming at a wall. I'm wailing at the wall. It's not that wall. You know, I mean, you could even say, like, here's Edward Gibbon's book. Let me just read like a random sentence out of it. Flattery and hope painted in the most lively colors the fall of Persia. That means I can go kill Persians. It's just like, oh, okay. So And plus, you know, when you're talking about things like these are pretty big books. You ever seen the Bible paper? Like, these are really big books, and I've got a small Quran here, but it's pretty small paper too. Like, there's a lot of stuff in here. There's a lot of stuff in here. Like, put it this way: it's like if you watched a movie and you thought, okay, this guy's bad. Like, maybe it's a crime movie or like a crime drama, and you're pretty sure. Like, if you watch Dexter or you watched it's like Monk. I used to watch the TV show Monk. If you watch Monk, it's very standardized writing. So when you watch Monk, you know, it's every episode, there's always a guy you think did it, you think was the killer, but it turns out he wasn't. It's just to kind of mislead you. He just kind of was acting weird and had some other stuff going on, or something was happening in his life, and he acted a little weird, and that's the way that they present it to you, to lead you away from figuring it out. So it's not too easy, which that show, the crimes are usually pretty easy to figure out. That's kind of what this is like. And if you just turn it off after the first 10 minutes, you're like, well, God saith, so I'm pretty sure that I can bomb Iran. You kind of miss the rest of it, where it turns out that guy didn't do it. He didn't commit the murder, and it was somebody else you didn't expect. And you're going to need to watch the whole thing to get the whole story. Just why does that have to be explained? It's very stupid. It's very silly. No, I'm not mocking any of these texts. I'm likewise not mocking Muhammad. I am just pointing out that people can abuse them. It's like a gun. I can hold a gun. I could put a gun to my head, put it in my mouth. Or I could not play with it. I could pick up a gun, I could clean it, and I could responsibly hold it and possess it and lock it away if I'm not going to be using it. I mean, I never locked my guns away because I'm not an idiot. Someone breaks in my house. Hold on a second, I need to open the safe. But, being responsible with it, that's what these books are. And that's also, by the way, that's why Hippocrates has his finger over his lips. That's why initiates into the Greek mysteries were sworn in with a vow of secrecy. And if you unveiled the secrets, you would be killed. Part of that's metaphoric as well, but you would be killed. Why? Because you can't just walk into the inner sanctum and declare that you have all the answers, and you can't steal fire from the gods without consequence. So yeah, they might kill you. Now all of this stuff is public knowledge. Now we have the ability to just buy the books. Now we have the ability to talk about it on the radio. And yet, it's weird because all the notion that one religion or another is better or right or wrong or whatever, like the origins of these ideas and these traditions taught that it shouldn't just be given away. People should have to earn it. Wisdom is not bestowed, it is achieved. If you give it away, people are going to use it and abuse it. Well, that idea, especially in Greece, thousands of years ago, has been proven right. 1400 years before Christ. It's been proven right. Because when people are instructed in these mysteries without knowing anything about them or having context or going through the necessary purification processes or self-reflection, what otherwise would be you have to conquer the evil in you becomes I have to conquer the evil outside of me. And that becomes everybody who doesn't believe what I interpret this to be is wrong. And so I'm just going to kill them. And that's why they used to kill you if you revealed the secrets. Because if you revealed the secrets, it would lead to exactly what we see happening in the world today. And for those of you genuinely asking what a metaphor is like a figure of speech. And the definition of metaphor is that it's not meant to literally be interpreted. So, like, for example, killing an animal sacrifice. It's a metaphor. The animal is the carnal self, the animal instinct. Control your emotions, control your thoughts, control your actions. Another trinity. You can do that, then you're granted entrance into the mystery schools. Can't do that. You're not worthy. That's why you had to offer up an animal sacrifice on the altar. It wasn't a literal animal. It was a symbolic animal. It's a metaphor. An allegory is similar to that. Didn't Jesus himself say he spoke in parables? All right, so that's the show tonight. I didn't expect it to be 3 hours, but that's what it turned into. I appreciate you joining us. tstradio.info. I am uncertain if we're still on ground zero. Looks like I'm still connected on StreamYard, so maybe we are. If you're listening on there, thank you for tuning in on groundzeroplus.com. Thank you for tuning into the Secret Teachings tonight. You can check out the whole show in the archive. You'll have no advertisements if you're a subscriber. If you do not subscribe or you haven't subscribed, then you are going to have to listen to some ads. That's how we support the show. It's very cheap to subscribe. It's $50 for a year. You get access to some of my digital books. It's a pretty good deal, 5 nights a week. I've even had people ask me to take their money and make it more expensive because they feel bad $50 a year getting what they get. But I think that's a fair price at $50. Also, my Protocols of Goyim book is out, and I will have the Occult Arcana hardcover out soon. I'm not sure when, but as soon as I get the printing figured out for that, I'll have that out as well. Thank you for tuning into the show tonight. Stay safe, stay informed, stay healthy. I appreciate all of you in the chat room. Thank you for listening and commenting. Thank you for supporting the show as well. Ground Zero, groundzeroplus.com, thesecretteachings.info. I will talk to you on the next broadcast.